To order the WTA Board of Directors Workshop for Thursday, June 4th, 2026. Vicki, can we start with Lola, please?
Yes, Buchanan.
Here.
Cotton is currently absent. Hawkinson.
Here.
Fortice.
Here.
Lotvak. Currently absent. Lilyquist.
Here.
And Maryland is planning to join us at 9 o'clock. Breinstra is absent. Stewart and Darwin.
Present.
Thank you. We do have a quorum.
Did you see Jen just arrived as well?
All right, thank
Oh,
you.
thank you. It's here. It's in the house.
Sliding in.
It's filled.
All right, item C, public comment. Each speaker is allowed a maximum of 3 minutes to address the board. Is there anyone online who would like to unmute and address the board? Please do so now. Seeing none, is there anyone in person who would like to address the board? Okay, item D, giving a lift. A handful of bargaining highlights.
Yes. So since our last meeting, a number of great things have happened. At the end of each of these, I start thinking like, oh, are we going to have enough to lead off with good things the next time? And lo and behold, by the time it rolls around, it's like, oh, we've got too many things to talk about. So we have a few good things to talk about. As you know, the kind of the purpose of this is just to connect us back to our mission and what we're doing, and remind us of the good things that the taxpayer-funded dollars are doing out in the community. So with that, we'll start off with.
I'd like to. He's not. I'd like to invite Operations Supervisor Brian Richardson forward, who's Doug's supervisor, to talk about a recent award and recognition that Transit Operator Doug Richardson received.
Yes, we got a surprise email the other week saying that Doug Richardson, one of our WTA drivers who does college routes, was nominated by students as a mental health champion. He was the only non-Western person to be nominated for this award. And so Doug actually got to go to the ceremony last week. And it was just an honor for Doug to be honored by the students at Western, because Doug has this cult following up on campus. There was a Instagram reel we made of Doug driving the bus.
Yes,
it's the most watched Instagram reel on Western's account. And so you look at the comments, everybody's like, Doug is awesome, Doug is great. And one quick story. So last year at the end of the school year, I'm in the lobby and I see these kids come in, they've got a big gift basket. And I just happened to be in the lobby and they're like, hey, can you give this to Doug for us? And it was a gift basket for an end of the year thank you. It had a thank you card. It had dog treats and dog toys in it, because Doug would talk about his dogs. And it was just like, oh my gosh. I don't know. So he's got this amazing effect on people that he transports every day on the bus. So just the stories just keep coming. I could go on, but wanted to highlight that.
Hey, Brian, did you want to share why Doug's not here today?
Well, Doug, I asked Doug, it's like, do you want to, be present at the board? And he's just like, he had to think about it. He's like, you know what? I really, it's the end of the quarter. I really want to be out there, taking care of my people. So just sharing that, Doug would have liked to have been here otherwise, but he felt it was more important to, connect with his people out there. This, you might not see these people again, being the end of the quarter. So Doug felt strongly about being on the board.
Yeah, congratulations to Doug. That's a huge honor. Next, we want to highlight, so I think everybody here is aware that we do an annual driver rodeo. So this is where we get to test our operators and some of our non-operators' skills. They are on very different levels. And for the past, I think, 8 years, our WTA paratransit driver, Jonathan Taylor, has won our rodeo. Well, we just spoiled the lead there, Rochelle. But bottom line up front, Jonathan Taylor is the national paratransit rodeo champion. Jonathan has had the opportunity to go, I think, 6 times now to the national rodeo. When you win our local rodeo, you get to go to the state rodeo. Jonathan has actually never won the state rodeo. Second place, top 3 in the state.
That's awesome.
Gets the opportunity to go to nationals. Jonathan was in Omaha, Nebraska back early May and
Congratulations.
won the award. And one thing that I want to share about Jonathan in that is it's taken a ton of time and dedication. He has put in a lot of effort outside of work. He does an amazing job. He is accident free in his time at WTA. But he puts a lot of time and effort into practicing and testing his skills for this. He travels down to other rodeos to practice. And so there's a lot of dedication there. But what's most impressive is, and I got to see this, we were in Louisville at the National Rodeo back in 2019, I think it was. And Jonathan builds community around the rodeo. He connects with his fellow competitors. Yeah, he wants to win, obviously. But it's more important that he's building community and connection and camaraderie and supporting others and doing their best. They're walking through the elements and talking through how to do it. He's raising a flag for the yellow team that he happens to be on and rallying folks. And he's just building community and support for his fellow competitors. And it's an amazing testament to Jonathan. He represents WTA amazingly well on the local, state, and national level when he's doing it. So congratulations, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Congratulations, Mr. Great.
Okay, so we got those, and Rob, you would come up, and Genevieve is going to talk a little bit about Rob at the Van Zandt's opening.
I got it.
And what Rob did about
I took that picture of you while we were driving by. That's not a good one.
and it highlights that as WTA is out in the community and in the county, the things that are in addition to service that are folks with their big hearts and the way they approach things, handle emergencies and other things. So Genevieve.
Yes. So I really wanted to just take a moment to acknowledge Rob and his hard work. A few weeks ago, we had a ribbon cutting at the Van Zandt Community Hall to celebrate some infrastructure updates that WTA helped with as part of the Transit Access Fund, which you'll hear more about today. But as Hayden and I were arriving, we saw a massive car accident. There had been a hit and run of a semi truck and like a small SUV car and sedan. That's the word I wanted, a small sedan. And Rob had been there. He got there just a little bit before us to help us set up. And he immediately jumped into action. He had his work truck with him. And so he was loaning out high visibility gear. He was putting out cones for people. He was helping safely flag cars. And he was making sure that everybody had what they needed to be able to respond to the incident. And I have a quote here from the Van Zandt Communications Chair, Will Radke. He said, "I want to express my deep gratitude to the young man who was on site to prepare for the event. As you know, there was a serious accident, a hit and run by a semi-truck that occurred less than an hour before opening, only 100 yards from the hall. Rob and I were hanging the banner when it occurred. When the seriousness of the accident was apparent, we rushed over to the scene to help the injured driver and direct traffic around the car, which was in the middle of the highway. Rob ran back to his truck to retrieve safety vests and traffic cones. He remained on site, helping in any way he could until fire and sheriff arrived. That's the kind of thing that, even more than funding and project support, wins the respect and admiration of people out in the county. Please pass on our gratitude to Mr. Reardon's, and let Rob know how much we recognize and appreciate his selflessness that day." So shout out to Rob. Let's give him a round of applause. Rob is always someone who is the first to jump in to help. I have never once heard Rob complain about doing extra duties outside of his work, from rescuing a Barbie out of the trash to dealing with my hundreds and hundreds of event asks, Rob always is willing to help. So if you want to read more about Rob's accomplishments and more, by the way, just a plug, there's our employee newsletter on the table that has the agendas. We've got a lot of employee accolades in there, but thank you, Rob, for everything you do.
My pleasure. And thank you for what you do here, because it allows me to do that.
Yeah.
Keep up with the good work.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah. Okay, and then some one good thing from the organization, Hayden is going to talk to us a little bit about the Van Zant's opening. Hayden runs the transit access program for us and these events, and so Hayden, over to you for leading that effort.
Yeah, thanks everyone. So Genevieve kind of buried the lead. So we were out at the Van Zant Community Hall in May. So it was May 15th. They had the grand reopening. So you may or may not know, but WTA runs the Transit Access Fund program, which is a grant funding program that annually puts up $500,000 to increase non-motorized access to existing transit facilities. And so part of the 2025 program included the Van Zant Community Hall renovation project. And so specifically, this was to increase ADA connection to the existing Van Zant Community Hall, which if you haven't been out there, it was a little bit run down, dilapidated. It was really limiting on the number of people that could occupy the structure. And so by increasing ADA access and improving a new access point on the north side of the building, they were able to double the occupancy from 50 people to 100. And so we were able to go out there as part of the ribbon cutting ceremony in May. And it was a great celebration. There was about 100 community members. And it was probably the largest ceremony that I've been at that really felt like a family gathering. And WTA staff was welcomed, and Rob was given shout outs during the ceremony for what he did beforehand. Les said a few words in there as well. Senator Shoemake and County Executive Paul Sadu were there. It was just a great ceremony, a great opportunity to be a part of that as well. So we wanted to outline that.
And can you talk a little bit about where our contribution was used?
Yeah, so we were able to give the project $30,000 in the Transit Access Fund. And so with that, they were able to construct full ADA improvements with a ramp and that new entry on the north side of the building that connects directly to our existing bus stop there.
They talked about that they may not have been able to do the project because it had to be brought up to ADA requirements without this participation. So it helped our bus stop, it helped them with that great meshing of partnership. Hayden, thank you for leading that.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Now we have a couple of service awards.
Yeah, absolutely. So first up, we're gonna recognize Terminal Expediter Kevin Goldsberry, and to do so, his supervisor Jim Nealon is gonna present the award. Now, Kevin, you're on. I can see your name.
Uh-huh.
And Kevin, if you can hear me, I got your pen, buddy. Calm down. So on June 1st, Kevin celebrated his 20-year anniversary with WTA, which is an amazing feat. He came up to me that morning. He's like, "Where's my pen? Where's my pen?" So yeah, if you don't mind, I didn't want to forget anything, so I'm just going to read kind of so I don't buff it up. We're gathered here today to celebrate an incredible milestone, Kevin Goldsberry's 20-year service at WTA. Kevin has truly learned our operations from the ground up. He started his journey on the road as a transit operator and then transitioned in supporting passenger accessibility as a mobility trainer, helping guide people with special needs as they learn to navigate the WTA system. He then provided his logistical skills by filling vital roles as a sub-expediter and sub-dispatcher. For the last full decade, Kevin has anchored our operations as a terminal expediter, whether he's working directly with the public out on the concourse or supporting his peers and team members. He brings top-tier customer service, extensive system knowledge, and strong leadership to every single shift every day. His dedication to our community extends far beyond standard operations. In 2023, Kevin's rapid response and emergency preparedness earned him the prestigious Red Cross Call to Action Award for a life-saving intervention at our Coronado station in coordination with his teammate, Andrew Butcher. Their keen awareness and forethought led them to notice an individual who had not exited the restroom. Upon investigating, they discovered a critical medical emergency. Thanks to their quick actions and the individual received life-saving help in time. Kevin's 20 years of service have truly connected our community to opportunity and saved lives in the process. A huge thank you to Kevin and congratulations.
Yes. Give it a pause there in case he was going to say anything.
Oh, I don't think Kevin's going to chime in, but Kevin's currently working at the downtown station in the expediter booth, doing the thing he loves to do, which is support our passengers and public. Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, Rochelle, do you want to display the next one, please? Kim, do you want to come up while she's doing that?
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, thanks to Vicky for finding some great pictures here. But this is an opportunity to celebrate Kim and her 20 years with WTA. During that time, Kim she started out as department assistant, got promoted to maintenance program assistant coordinator, got promoted to warehouse administration supervisor, manager, was the interim fleet director, and now is our fleet director. So she's had quite an illustrious career, including in 2008, being WTA's Employee of the Year. So she's had a long, illustrious career with us, and we're better for it. So with that, here's your 20-year pin. And,
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'll open the floor. If you want to say anything, you don't have to. I know you're soft-spoken, but.
I am, yeah, pretty much an introvert here. I just want to say thank you. I never expected to rise to department director. It's been a great career. I came here, Pete Stark was my boss. He was a great mentor, and it's been wonderful. I've worked with wonderful people. It's been a great agency. You were here.
I was here.
I think, were you here?
I was.
Yeah, yeah. It's been wonderful, and I highly recommend working here. Thank you. All right, item E, board action. E1, consideration of air transit bus water purchase.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sandy Bartman, and I've got some notes just to keep me on track and keep my thoughts organized. So I'd like to propose a request to authorize the purchase of a paratransit and support fleet automatic washer. The existing washer is outdated. We can't get any service parts for it. And so in that case, our crew now is hand scrubbing our vehicles. And there's slip risks, there's efficiency issues, and it's not a thorough cleaning also. So the cost of this Westmatic washer is $336,000. We'd like to get it approved before June 15th is the deadline, where the price significantly increases to an additional $25,100. And staff recommends it, and it's fine. Any questions?
Questions, comments?
I'll move approval.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the purchase of a paratransit bus washer, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
E2, board meeting minutes.
Approval? Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the board meeting minutes, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes. Item F, board reports and discussion. WTA 2040 update, Tim and
Rochelle, I'll go ahead and share my screen.
There you go.
I'm so far away.
Celeste, do you want me to go ahead? Yeah, sorry. Okay, this item is provide an update on WTA 2040, which is our long-range transit plan. We felt that it was time to kind of bring the board up to speed on the implements of the plan. It's been about 5 years, and as you can imagine, a lot's happened in 5 years, a little less than 5 years. Yeah, it's not. For those of us you have been around with the plan adoption, it's kind of amazing to think that we're almost 5 years into it. So, and a lot has happened. So, what I'm going to do today is walk you through some of the things that we've completed, and then discuss, what happens next with the plan, since a lot has occurred, and we need to kind of decide if it's still valid today in our current environment. First of all, I wanted to we're going to talk about background to the plan, why we did the plan for those of you who are around. I'll talk about the overall direction provided by the plan. I'll bring you up to speed on things that we've implemented, and then maybe how the environment has changed, some updates that are needed for the plan, and then I have a couple questions for you to answer to help provide direction to staff as far as where we go next with this process. Okay, first of all, the plan. Why did we do the long-range transit plan? It provides overall guidance to service at the agency. Again, I mentioned it's been about 5 years. It was envisioned as a 20-year plan. We found that maybe it's less than 20 years, given all that's been accomplished in that time frame. We also, in the plan, we identified a service network. And you might recall, and I'll go over this later in the slide presentation, but we had a kind of a basic service network based on expected revenues and needs. And then we had an enhanced plan that was based on if there were additional revenues, we could expand even further our service needs. It talked about capital to support the service, talked about Moab expansion, Bellingham Station expansions, and then the various funding needs, operating costs, which at that time, the estimate was $15 million for the 2040 network, additional needed, and $26 million for an enhanced network. So additional revenues that were expected to support those, and then some capital costs as well. And this was developed based on extensive community engagement, and then board interaction. We had various board check-ins and conversations along the way to make sure that it was kind of saying and doing things that you wanted out of that process. So, okay, so I stuck this one in here originally, thinking that it would help us understand what the vision outcome of a vision would be, but this is more about kind of the vision for the plan itself. So it's a little bit different than I think what I thought this would say, going back and looking at the plan nowadays. And again, I mentioned that it's supposed to be a framework for service and capital investment decisions over the next 20 years. And then to take advantage of opportunities, being adaptable. I think that's a really important point given some of the technological changes and other things we've seen, and the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic. And then really a key into the partnership work that I think we've made a lot of progress on. You've heard some of those things today already. So that was, again, focused more on the plan for what the vision, or what the plan was, the vision for what the plan was supposed to accomplish versus what the service vision was.
The service vision is more captured in this overall direction that's provided in the plan itself. We had what we call the 3 E's, leading with equity. So as we make service decisions, we look at equity, and I'll talk about what that means a little later on and how we measure that, an efficient system, and then environmental progress. Those are the 3 key components as we talk about our service decisions in the future. These goals then that come out of the plan are, I was looking back at these are really reflective of our mission. You'll see a lot of these things are reflected in our mission here, and we're reflected in those 3 E's, innovation, which is also one of our mission statements, partnerships, environmental focus here, and sustainable services, those sorts of things you can see, in our mission statement. And these provided the basis for then our strategies. We had a list of extensive strategies that I'll talk about here in a minute, as I discuss how much progress we've made. And then the service network, which was a map and components about where our service levels would change, how they would grow and adapt, change. And those were based upon those higher level vision areas like the 3 E's, service framework, typologies, which what that means is that is how we categorize our different route structures, our frequencies, our service levels. You think about frequent service, which we talked a lot about during our service about allocation framework discussions, our small cities service, our regional service, those sorts of things are part of that service typology that we set up. And we had some guidance around what that looked like in the plan itself. And again, that resulted in this 2040 service network where we made some, I'd say, moderate expansions to our service. And again, that was based upon expected financial resources that if you had continual growth, we would be able to implement those sorts of things in the plan. And then we also had, I mentioned also that we had this enhanced network that was based upon getting additional resources, whether that was increasing the sales tax component, or if our revenues were greater than expected, then we can begin looking at that enhanced network, which invested more in our frequent service and expanded service throughout the county as well. So just to kind of give you a visual of what that basic network looks like, we have a map here that showed you where those lines were at. I think one of the things that we realized after drawing the maps was the reality is a bit different as we begin to understand where the needs are, where our performance is, that it's not always exactly reflective of the maps that we drew at the time. And so I think this an indication that we need to be flexible, that it's really hard to draw a map of the future since it's constantly changing. Our performance changes, the rider needs changes, development occurs in different areas at different times, and it may not show up well in a map like this. So it's helpful, but it's not the end all for service changes. And we let that happen through the service change process, let the board make those decisions ultimately and how that service does change.
Tim, looking at this map, what do you see that's maybe most out of alignment with what we might think now?
Yeah, I think some of the things that we said back in this plan, I guess the most notable thing would be those on-demand areas. So as you know that, and I'll talk about this in a bit, as we rolled out the Lid and Hop and tested that pilot, and then we did the microtransit study, we realized that, well, we're not quite ready for that. So that'd be one area where it wasn't quite reflective of, the plan's not quite reflected, although it may be in a 20-year time frame. Some of those red lines, moving to the red lines, but those may be adjusted depending on where the demand occurs. I think it's just when you go do a deeper dive, sometimes you realize those lines don't line up exactly where the service needs to be. So I guess that's the point, that it's not an exact process. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Any questions about that, ma'am?
And then also the plan talked about what outcomes we could expect. And so we had a variety of graphs like this that's just indicative of some of those things where we would expect increased ridership, more boardings on our system, more accessibility, better access for priority populations. I should mention, because I forgot to mention that our equity component did rely on measuring access by priority populations, which we defined as zero vehicle households, seniors, low-income populations, and there were a couple other that I'm spacing out, but there are 5 components of that equity component that we measured, and so this was an outcome that we expected to see, that the access would increase based upon that service network. We're able to capture some of this as part of our service guidelines now. So we've sort of codified this into a reporting mechanism. You saw that as part of the annual report where we talk about some of those outcomes. Okay, now we get into progress on implementation of the plan. So that was all background, give you sort of the framework as kind of a reminder of what our expectations were from the plan. I just kind of as an overall, I think in reflecting back and looking at implementation of actions and various high-level activities, we made a ton of progress on the plan itself and the things we said we were going to do at the time. So I'm going to kind of run through some of those things. From a high level, we had what we were thinking about as transformative projects that the plan described. And so some of these things you might recall, the rapid transit project is one we recently completed the locally preferred alternative, beginning to work on implementation. So that was defined in the plan as studying and then beginning to implement more frequent service, better speed and reliability. So made some progress there. Zero emission fleet transition. We did a study back in 2023, and then we have this short-term interim guidance on how we're going to implement that fleet transition with the E99, the hybrid buses, and then looking at longer-term transition over time. So again, the study was very extensive, and then the follow-up work has helped us to define what exactly we can do in the short term. And then the microtransit, I mentioned that, looking at the on-demand pilot, and then studying the microtransit, realizing that it's very costly, that we're going to wait until the right moment that becomes effective for us, and we're able to implement some of that work. And then the final thing I want to mention, and there's a lot more than just this that we've done as far as transformative, but these are the big things, I guess. The Bellingham Station, and I think you're all familiar with progress on that, making great progress on that site, the purchase and now the activation and the longer term planning. So again, a lot of work underway. Of course, not everything's been implemented, but we're making great progress on all these areas. Questions on that? And then I spent some time, there is a chart in the back of your presentation where if you kind of see all the detail of every single strategy, gone through and documented the current status of all of the strategies. And this is just a chart showing you kind of our current status of everything. There's very few things that we haven't been able to at least touch on since the plan was done. Some of those things we're just not able to because they're outside factors that we just can't get to. For example, the micro mobility elements, the shared bike. There's a strategy around that. That's something we're going to be working with the city when they develop policy around. But most of the things we've been able to make at least some progress on, and there's been some projects that have been completed in the plan. A lot of the strategies are sort of ongoing, things that we'll continue to work on, like working with the communities around their comprehensive plans and land use elements. So we have staff now that working on those things. So again, a lot of progress and at least touching on many of those various elements.
Okay, and then I wanted to kind of touch on beyond the transformative projects, kind of focus on a few things I think are worth highlighting as far as accomplishments from plan adoption. I think the partnership one is a big area, maybe the greatest success that we've had. We've been able to grow our partnerships, and the Circle of Care is a great example of that, where we've not only been able to grow partnership, but we've also been able to fill some transportation gaps that are difficult for WTA to provide. And so, yeah, I think this is a great example of one of those partnerships, but there are many others out there that we've been able to work on, whether it's just working with local jurisdictions on various plans and ideas. And so that's again, ongoing work that we provide. Maybe nothing new, but again, I think it's been expanded, if nothing else, after this process, after the long range plan. Transit Access Fund, we've talked about that already. I think that's been a big accomplishment for us, rolling out that program and seeing it grow and expand. Been very successful. I think it's been recognized at the state level of kind of a innovative program that you don't see elsewhere. And then again, just at the local level, just the benefit that we can provide for local communities to just get them over that last financial hump of some of their projects. So again, that continues to expand and grow, and a lot of interest in that program. Our bus stop accessibility, we continue to make progress on making bus stops accessible. There's a lot to do. I think we're about 50% of our overall number. I think we have about 900 bus stops, more or less, and we've been able to improve about 50% of those. We do maybe 10 a year. It's going to get more challenging as we get deeper into the number as they're not as easy. Some of them are not easy to improve. But again, with the funding that we have, and then the city contributing some funding for the last several years, we've been able to make some progress on that. So I think that's been another accomplishment. I think this, again, another community gap partnership program, but this is what this picture is indicative of is our van grant program, where we provide surplus vans to the community. And that's also been a very successful project, and that's grown in terms of its interest. We're getting a lot of when we have surplus vans, we don't have enough of these, but when we do have vans, there's a lot of demand for those vans, a lot of competition for communities or local nonprofits to get hold of those vans. And so I think that's indicative of sort of a gap that we have in our system, that sort of the smaller scale partnerships, there's areas that are difficult to serve that larger buses that paratransit doesn't serve. And this is something that we hope to explore further with a community van program that Malcolm's helping to look at to see if this could provide and help provide that, close that gap throughout the county. So stay tuned for that. But this is a program that at least helps a little bit in that way. And then this is a map just from the service guidelines. Again, you saw some of the outcomes of that in our recent annual performance report. We were able to adopt guidelines back in 2024 and then revise those guidelines in 2026. And so that's providing us with good information about how things are working in the real world, basically with our service. And then I think this one is in regards to our fleet transition. Let me take a look at my notes. It's a problem with not having words on the slides and remember what I meant to say about this one. But I think this is indicative of, this is about grants and how successful we've been with our grant programs. And kudos to Mary and Maureen and others, the grant team, for being, in some ways, I think sometimes we wonder if we're too successful because it does require a lot of work, but it's a good thing that we've been able to acquire buses and money for additional facilities throughout our system. And so that's been another large accomplishment, I think, over the past few years. Any questions about that? Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about things that have changed since we adopted the plan and things that may influence how we update and revise the plan in the future. I think staff is wanting to update the plan now, even though it's only been 5 years, that enough has changed to suggest that we need to start a retool or rethink a number of different things. And it starts with really the adoption of the service allocation guideline that Maureen and I spent some time with the board over 18 months. I think it's probably 18 months. We started to define what that new allocation was. So the short-term allocation, as you might recall, was that 50-50 frequent service or maximize ridership, broad service coverage split. And so the plan, obviously, it's a guiding factor in service in the future. So we need to make sure that we include that in the plan itself moving forward. And then we're reflecting the long term, maybe a higher percentage, but this is the short term that at least provides that initial guidance. And then reflecting on all the things, all the studies that we accomplished since the plan, a lot of things that we did. I think we were super busy there for a while, working with consultants and doing internal documentation around a variety of different topics that are shown here. And then I think also reflecting on our partners and how you as our partners have accomplished various plans and initiatives, starting with the comp plans as well as other maybe functional plans like the city's bike and ped plans. That this now our plan should be reflective of some of those changes and respond to things that the communities have said that they want in terms of that environment in which we operate. And then just kind of reflecting on how things have changed with our service and how our communities adapted to that service and ridership. And I think at the time, we did this during the kind of the end of the pandemic. And now we're coming out of the pandemic, and this is indicative of the ridership leveling off, which suggests, okay, think about what that suggests for how we provide service in the future and what kind of things are needed and how we make our investments. So that would be a factor in our update as well as the paratransit miles, which are growing. They were growing up until 2019, and with the pandemic, they dropped, and now they continue to grow back to pre-pandemic levels. What does that mean for a system? What does that mean for financial sustainability? And those sorts of things are important to reflect on as well. And then our financial landscape, which is obviously a big thing that drives a lot of what we do. And you've seen this graph before, where our expenditures are increasing at a rapid pace, and we need to think about what kind of service we can provide given the expenses and given our capabilities. So that'll be something also to be looked at as part of an update. And then I just mentioned about technology. We've obviously, this has been changing rapidly everywhere, but in particular with public transportation systems. Still a little opaque as far as how this is going to affect us at a high level, but I think at a smaller scale, we've been able to adapt some of that technology with our real-time signs. We just recently installed 7 e-paper real-time signs at stops. We're installing new fare readers. So this is all reflective of sort of new technology, the open payment system. And then looking at our feature enhanced transit signal priority, which is based on machine learning, AI machine learning. But then we have this factor of potential autonomous vehicles, which is becoming realized in large cities. If it does hit a smaller community, what is that going to do for our service? So those are kind of unknowns. I think the plan is going to continue to struggle about what exactly we do, but it needs to be flexible enough to be able to adapt to that and study those issues and respond as needed to our system to be able to make sure we don't fall behind with those technological needs and impacts. Questions about any of that stuff? Anything else the board can think of that is important to consider as part of an update?
But if I make one.
No, go ahead.
I think what this presentation, I think one of the things that Tim had highlighted for the importance of talking about this is that so many of these things that WTA is doing are tied together. It's a strategy. That these aren't just one-off independent things that are, oh, that's a good idea, let's go try that, or that's a good idea. These are all part of this overarching strategy to go together. And it's good for us to periodically remind ourselves that that's why we're doing these things. We'll have expansion and so forth and so on. It's because it's part of this strategy that we looked at to try to get us on the 2040. So.
Okay, now I'd like to kind of get some conversation going and discussion around the plan itself and where you think we should head next. So given what I've described and what you know about the overall direction of the plan with the 3Ds, now our service allocation framework, our typologies, our goals, the strategies that we've described. Is there anything you would change about that direction? Is it still valid? Does it need to shift in some way given the our current situation as well as kind of predicting the future we think might happen? So that's the first question. Is a service direction set by the plan still appropriate today? If there's anyone that wants to speak to that, I'd welcome that.
I just want to say, and I know Michael Cerbone has said this as well, but I think that you've done a really excellent job of keeping up on development, where development is going in all the areas, and really tying that in and keeping that in mind when future planning. And I think it makes a huge difference. And people bring your name up. They're impressed with what you've been doing. So I wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you.
I'll just give kudos to Hayden, who is spearheading our communications around land use, and he's done a great job in constant contact with the local communities and the plan and things like that. And that's really helped us a lot to be able to keep up and comment and then assist the local jurisdictions on their needs, right? So that's been a success story, I think, for us that we didn't have before.
Yeah, no, I know that several people who work for the city of Ferndale are just really impressed with the communication and just the kind of team atmosphere that WTA has brought to them. So I think it makes a huge difference.
Thank you.
I just want to ask, because I've been asked this by developers, the situation in Blaine has changed drastically over the last few years because we've gone from planning for development in East Blaine, then to West Blaine, and then back to East Blaine. It's all over the place. And so now I've been asked by people, how do we get in touch with the WTA to let them know that, in fact, probably more of the ridership is moving to the new lower cost housing out on H Street. We just opened a couple of very new planned developments with Whatcom and Skagit housing, and that's brought young people into an area on H Street. Those are obviously going to be people that are going to be using the WTA versus maybe people in the west side of Blaine. How do we get that information to you? Is there a contact? Just let you.
Yeah, let us know. Again, Hayden is a good contact for that. I'm a good contact for that. So we'd love to sit down and talk to the local staff about those plans and try to understand and get ahead of that so we can respond effectively.
Yeah, and it really helps us because, planning for development and rapid transit or public transit is so important to work hand in hand so that what we are doing makes a lot of sense. And the other things that will affect, I'm not sure whether the buses are allowed to go over Dakota Creek Bridge. I know the fire truck.
Not yet.
So this is another thing that's trying to happen in Blaine, is to get that overpass, which will take in that Dakota Creek Bridge, which make it potentially a huge difference and save a lot of time for the buses, which then may allow you then to go out to further out on east on H Street without interrupting the service level and the times that it takes.
So for board members, the Dakota Creek that's being referred to, there's a weight limit that we discovered that we can't operate because our buses are over that weight limit. So we've detoured around. That used to be a quick connection from Blaine down to Birch Bay. And so we divert around, which adds time and inefficiency for everyone, riders and our travel times.
So the question is whether or not the service direction is still appropriate today. I am, in terms of like long range growth improvements for WTA, I'm particularly excited and focused on the locally preferred alternative. And that's not in the previous plan. It is in our new documents, but that's one way in which I think it's significantly out of date. And so for that reason alone, it seems to be a refresh is needed. I don't know if that resets the clock another like 5 years further out. You know, a lot of our planning documents, they're like 20-year documents, but they're revised every 5 years, right? Or I'm not imagining an overhaul, but it seems to be an update or something for that component alone, as well as some of the others that you mentioned.
And I was going to share this next question, which is related to what you brought up, is the time frame that we had a 20-year time frame. And I think we realized, like, wow, 20 years is a long time given all the changes. And I think in the past we used to do strategic plans in a shorter time frame, and so it was a little bit more nimble. And so I think in the plan we attempted to kind of get ahead of things, but we realized, well, wait, things are changing so rapidly that it's almost out of date in 5 years. And so does it make sense then to kind of step back and say, realistically, we're talking about 5 or 10-year periods and not 20-year periods, which, is beginning to feel unrealistic, I think, from a staff perspective, given that we're probably going to need to update this every 5 or so years. So that's the second question, if you feel that there should be a shorter time frame. Certainly the overall vision could be a 20-year vision and structure, but I think the shorter term aspects are becoming out of date.
Yeah, my feedback is I think you do need a longer vision. At least you make a mistake if you don't try to predict the future, and you make another mistake if you stick around too long to see your predictions fail. So I'm in favor of long range plans that you update in the intermediate term.
I think that is one of the challenges is you're trying to work through today's problems and uncertainty while anticipating and looking out for the future of the organization. And how do you balance those as we go through? And so having a vision and then shorter term plans that move through. And I think in the planning community, there's also a school of thought now that maybe 5 years is even too long, that with all the uncertainties going on and the unpredictabilities, having a longer term vision and shorter term action steps so that you remain nimble as things change is a way to go. So that's one of the things we're trying to think through.
Yeah, so I guess I look at our plan and what we want to do, and then I look at our income and our expenses, and that always worries me. And labor is our biggest cost. And then we talk about autonomous vehicles. I guess we should be at least someone thinking about other ways to deliver service as time continues to move on. Because if we really want to expand our service and we don't change our income, it takes people, and we can't afford more people at the moment. So a hard look at other ways to deliver service. And in an autonomous hub.
Right.
I mean, it just, something like that, or, some other. I think maybe in Bellingham there'd be an appetite for more tax, but I don't know that the county with the service levels we get would go along with that. So we have to learn to live within our means.
On the financial angle, the way I've been kind of oversimplifying it when I talk with people is we can't afford to increase service, but we can increase ridership. And the advantage of increasing ridership is it brings in revenue. The disadvantage of increasing service is it costs. So, I mean, there's a financial reason why we would just like the same system operating at a higher level as opposed to a bigger system. I think that's part of that one policy direction to grow ridership where it's easier to grow ridership.
So that's one of the things that we've taken from board discussions in the past is that we can't force people to get on the bus, but how do we make it what's within our control to make it better to increase the ridership? And so looking at things like the Linden Station transit-oriented development or transit-friendly development, or Bellingham Station, making it a gateway to help downtown and the city's plans for downtown's destination, and those things don't need to increase service. The rapid transit as well don't need to increase service, but to your point, Michael, increase ridership, which then increases value proposition, and hopefully revenue.
I was just going to add, I think the work, and it was mentioned about the land use part of that, but I think that's key for us, that we're realizing it's even adding service is not necessarily going to create that ridership, but it's the underlying environment, it's the land use and the other aspects that are going to drive the ridership more than just adding a bus, right, to an area that, that you don't have enough people there or enough interest, then you're not going to be able to just get people on a bus. And so that's kind of the work. I think a lot of that comes back down to the working with the local communities on where we can create those situations where it does help, and encourage the environment, and parking's part of that, I think that's really the key here.
I think that's kudos to the board for recognizing that in these discussions, and the board aligns capability and capacity by creating a position where for land use to actually get after that thing. And so we've resourced and aligned capacity and capability to the strategy, and kudos to the board for resourcing that, because that's really paid dividends.
So in ridership, I assume 2007-8, that was Go Line implementation. That's why.
Yeah.
It took off.
Was that the
Universal Bus Pass?
Yeah, with Western.
Also of note, Kim was hired in 2006.
Yeah.
And look at that. Tim, I believe you joined the team in like 1819. Just saying, you look at the chart.
No. But that's just a remarkable increase. And if we could get back to 5 million riders, that would be
5 million.
We're just shy of 4 now. And 1 million more boardings at $2, but say it averages out to $1, that would help.
Well, I think we were kind of looking at this number in relation to other agencies, and they're also kind of leveling off now. You had this big rebound, and now there's a lot of leveling off as far as ridership. So it's kind of a national kind of phenomenon. It's kind of the reality, but
you think high gas prices would bump this up a bit?
It takes a while for that. I think economists will say it takes at least 6 months to see an effect, right? And it has to be a high enough level for that to take effect. But I think it's not quite 6 months into it yet. I don't think so. We're monitoring to see if there is some kind of impact.
Part of underlying that is they're looking at behavioral economics too, like what happens, changing behavior, which was part of the rationale of the board last year, and putting service anticipatory, increasing into Old Town and Waterfront King Mountain based on the level of development that is going in the number of units, so that when people are moving in, they have an option to ride as opposed to waiting 2 or 3 years down the road and saying, hey, change your behavior. So trying to fold all those various things in.
I feel like I should know the answer to this, or maybe especially being on the cog board. But what are the general trends in people's travel and commuter behavior? If more people are working from home, are more people having lower trips traveled in general? Because the reason I'm asking this is WTA kind of competes in that transportation space. If people are traveling less, even if we're equally effective and just as popular or more popular, then our use goes down too. Is travel behavior actually flattening out or reduced despite increasing population? Or is there actually increased travel, in which case there's a market share that we're maybe not capturing?
Yeah, I don't know about the last couple of years, but I know that it did level out. In fact, per capita, it's been VMT's been dropping. Overall, it's growing, but per capita, it's been flat or dropping, right? So that's general. But as far as like specific trends, yeah, work from home, that's been a greater share now than it was pre-pandemic. So that's a bigger factor, right, than it used to be. And then I think the other factor that it's probably experienced more by larger cities is less focus on commuter trips and commuter times, that people tend to have different work times now than they used to. And so, you're seeing not as much demand, and like in the morning peak, you have people to work. You're seeing more midday travel is the bigger change, and then more weekend travel than there used to be. So that's been a change, right? And
more midday travel would be an advantage to us, right? Because peaks are hard to meet, but if the peak isn't so peaky, then our system is better suited to that.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of in general, but I think we also see it depends on which route we're talking about. Like our Route 331, the Gold Line, is the highest ridership is around, I think, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's pretty low. It actually grows throughout the day, but that's much different than a Western service, which is, more based on school times. And so it depends on where you're at, frankly, in the system. So it does.
Where I guess they're going is we can only grow where there is transportation needs, right? And we're, like I said, competing within that space for quote unquote market share.
Yeah.
And so, this could all be explained by the fact that people aren't traveling as much and we're capturing just as much market share, or it could be the opposite way. So, and that's why I'm just trying to understand that our transportation needs, particularly as it suits this community, the travel needs within Whatcom County.
Well, are we still yet to see the results of the COGS big travel survey? I think we are, right?
I feel I should know, but I don't.
Yeah, I mean, they did a big survey right after ours, and it was a much bigger survey. So I do think that's a really good question, and it should be answered, I feel like, by their household.
Yeah, I think they have results out.
Okay. Yeah, we should look.
Listening to this discussion, I'm just wondering, we talked about like high gas prices maybe influencing ridership, but would high gas prices like kind of direct people maybe to work more from home instead of jumping on the bus? So we may not see that correlation that had happened in the past, because it may not be as important for people to get to the office if they have the opportunity to work from home. So just throw that out there, that high gas prices may not equal air ridership this time.
People may stay at home. They may not take that trip. They could,
yeah,
or take that vacation or whatever it is.
Also significantly more viable non-vehicle transportation options if you're traveling within your community to and from work. You think about the amount of electric bikes, scooters, one wheels. How many of those are we seeing where previously that would have been either you're walking, riding your 10 speed, here we go. Or 10 speed. Yeah, I don't know. Dang it. That's right. But I mean, I think you do. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You do see a lot more alternative transportation in the community that certainly is drawing those non-vehicle, right, single occupancy vehicle drivers. I don't know to what percentage, but that would be directly competing with transit.
I think you're seeing the mode share of bike use, at least in Bellingham. I don't know the rest of the county going up, but the share of transit is about remaining the same, or maybe
early. So I think we've seen a little teeny bumps in non-motorized. We've seen a slight downshift in single vehicle occupancy, But the delta is due to the at-home non-commuters. The progress is there. So our mode shift has been like a 1% shift over the last few years. Just not much.
Yeah. Also, I mean, to the point of commuters and what are folks doing, I think about our ADX. I think back, 10 years ago, and we ride ADX. Oh, sorry, the ADX is the route that connects Bellingham to Skagit. We used to have to run 2, sometimes 3 buses on that on Friday afternoon because we had so many both students and commuters returning. And now it's a fraction of that, right? So if that's indicative of longer term commute travel, certainly that route is notably down.
Has electric vehicles impacted ridership to a measurable degree, I guess?
Yeah, I'm not sure we really know. I have my doubts that it has been a big factor, right, in that. Yeah, I don't see anything that suggests that it's been impactful, or at least us. Anything else? So what I'm hearing is, I think in general, the guidance provided by the plan is still appropriate and applicable to our needs, right? So that the things that we shared here, the goals, those sorts of things are still applicable. There may be some retooling needed, some rethinking about kind of what our future looks like, and if there's other ways to fill those gaps, right, in our financial needs. I'm hearing that as well. 20-year plan is the 20-year horizon is still appropriate in terms of those high level goals, but doing those regular updates is important, that we make sure we reflect and come back and readjust the strategies as a system changes, as our environment changes. So if that captures it,
I think, yeah, given on what Michael said about the 20-year plan, I agree that we should have one guiding document out there that looks way out, but for sure by 2028, we should be working on the 2050 plan.
Anything else I didn't capture, or anything else people want to reflect on?
I think this was great. And I like the long-term vision, this shorter planning horizon stuff, to remain adaptable. The one thing that always kind of goes to my mind is the metric of ridership, and what does that mean, and how does that measure? There's one measure, but how does it measure across what we're trying to accomplish? And so I think this discussion just further highlights how do we look at ridership. It's definitely a good metric, but one of the constant struggles I've had for a while.
Well, and I think the plan does allow us to go beyond just the ridership discussion and the access. And we did share with you the sort of the outcomes, and it wasn't all about growing ridership, but it was about that access, connecting people to opportunity. Those sorts of things were important to the equity component. So, but I think we can continue to discuss that, what that looks like, what our expectations around ridership are. I think that's an important factor. So I think that can be part of the update process too.
I just want to circle back to what Scott said earlier about, like self-driving vehicles or whatever. We are a Whatcom Transportation Authority, and buses may not be the be-all, end-all in 2050. Just looking at a broad range of transportation opportunities, I guess.
Yeah, maybe to solve Mary Lou's problem with the bridge that can't take a bus, we have different size buses. And I think even though it would be a pain in maintenance and curing, it would send a message to the community that we're right sizing buses for our routes.
And I think we could reflect on that in the plan. We've done a lot of work and thinking around the bus sizes, and that could be something that we discuss further and give some guidance on, I guess.
I mean, my guess is a paratransit bus could take care of the Linden route in terms of passenger load. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but
Well, one of the challenges that we have to work through, and this is not to say that I'm pushing back on studying that, because I think it is an important thing. The way our system's set up with interlining is that 26 bus comes in, turns into the 45
I see.
round.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so that may work in that, but not in the next. And so we have to try to think through that.
that's the beauty of having a common fleet is you can put any bus anywhere.
Yeah.
Plus the difficulty in getting the right vehicles too. There's not a lot of choice, as we understand, not as much choice as we'd like in terms of the bus sizes. So, but I think it's worth continuing to discuss
When
that.
you go to Europe, you see all kinds of choices.
Yeah, I know.
And that is part of the reason why drawing down those $5,307 is because that has become local dollars, and that frees us up to have more flexibility on the vehicles we're buying. Because one of the things we'll talk about later, one of the challenges we're having is there's two OEMs, there's two bus manufacturers out there, which causes issues. The other thing, Tim, is would you highlight, it's not part of your slideshow, but attached, just to highlight what that, is. I think it's a big deep dive.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that we did kind of looked at in great detail progress and strategies and how we've done, and I sort of touched on some of the things I think it's kind of reflective of addressing those strategies. So you can kind of read it for yourself, but I think we had 46 different strategies what I counted. So a lot of different things occurring, but we've done something on most of these elements. There's a few that we've not been able to get to based on maybe staff capacity or outside they're going on. But again, a lot of progress, but I'd be happy to answer questions about any one of these. There's a lot here. I touched on a lot of this in the presentation already at a high level, but again, if you have questions, happy to answer them. Yes. Yeah.
I apologize that I'm late to the conversation. I'm curious, as I look through these 2040 strategies in the status report, I see a lot of kind of ongoing or in progress. I'm wondering if there isn't an additional status level to share out about like what is going well, where are we struggling? And I'll be candid, like I see the smart trips in goal number 2 here and those light items. We've been having conversation about does that program need to evolve? Is it still in service the way it was a decade ago? It seems to just general awareness of that seems to have decreased within our own City of Bellingham staff. So how do we make that visible again? How is that, changing behaviors amongst city staff? So we're having some reflection, like we think that's a program if like we want to do better and be in partnership to do better on that. So I'm just wondering if there isn't like a little more specificity about what's being efficacious and what's less.
And not necessarily in some cases, yes, but I guess I would maybe that particular item kind of look to the subject matter experts to say, what is there anything happening on that end? But in general, not necessarily. It's not reflective in here. It's just kind of a quick accounting more than it's just a deeper dive into some of those things. And I have a question like, does this address that particular strategy? And there's a lot of subjectiveness to that assessment, right? Like, I think this is kind of what was intended by that strategy, because the strategies tend to be not always super specific about what they were intended to accomplish. So in that specific case, I can't really speak to that, like what's being discussed. I know that we're talking about, well, this is something to, I'll stop there, but do you want to add anything to the?
Well, if there's a direct question about smart trips?
No, I was just
Yeah,
saying that
that's
as an
what I
example,
know.
just one of the,
right. How effective?
one of the strategies that came up
support.
recently. Yeah. We have 40% of employees have joined the city in the last 5 years post-COVID, and they don't seem to have the same level of awareness or understand.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we get to that level. It's just higher.
One of the things maybe that highlights that we look at on this are dependencies, because we don't run smart trips, it's the cog. So, you know, we can't control it, we can influence, but we can't control it. And so the dependencies in here, maybe we can reflect on some of those things too. What's in our control, what is influential, what is outside our control, that drives some of the outcomes.
I think just, I guess at a high level, my comment is ongoing or in progress is not a very specific indicator of how we're progressing towards our goals.
It's a good comment. I think that under.
So,
Anything else for Tim?
so this must tie into the colors on page 14. I figured that out.
Yeah, I don't know if I used the same colors. Hopefully I did.
Yes, you did.
Okay, good.
And I now thinking about, so it's per item. Is it like a green one on here counts as one item out of the 40 something?
Correct.
And so it doesn't take into account if it costs a lot of money or if it's difficult to do or anything else. It's just a line item.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Very, very superficial, I guess, in that sense.
Yep. Okay.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
F2 reserves policy approach on the.
Good morning. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. I am on my way to Alaska, so hopefully my internet will stay in connection. And I apologize for my froggy voice. There was a little karaoke yesterday, so I think that might be some leftover. Anyway, good morning. Rochelle, could you go back one page for me, please? Nope. There we go. Yeah, there we go. So we're bringing back the reserves policy again for some more discussion. I'm going to go kick this off, and then I think I'll kick it over to Les, and he'll have some things more specific. But based on our conversation from May 7th, we made a couple adjustments to address the conversations about having leaner and tighter reserves, and also being able to monitor and assess the impacts of changing them. So this policy has a couple of changes. The first one is reducing the operating reserve from 90 days to 60 days. So 60 is the best practice from MRSC, and we have traditionally had 90 days with the understanding that was an auditor request. So that was an error on our part. And then also reducing the capital reserve from 2 years of local cash to 1 year. So those are a couple of things we did to respond to the board concerns. There aren't any graphs in here, just so we could talk about discussion purposes. And the reduction in the capital cash reserve will fluctuate from year to year depending on what projects feed over from the budget. So the board will have discretion on the capital projects, and then those will impact the reserve levels. The other comments that we had were on how to display the reserves and the cash in different colors. That will come with the quarterly operating financial updates and the annual report. So this is really just a higher level overview of, are we getting closer to hitting the mark on what the board's looking for in reserves? These two reductions would allow more money to go into the strategic reserve to fund some of those potential things we would like to try with longer success windows. Yeah, I think that's all I have for that. I can answer any questions on these specific changes, or I'll turn it over to Les if you had something that you wanted to add.
I guess I'd be curious the board's philosophy on reserves. I've been hearing a lot of contradictory things coming in on reserves that be very conservative because there's so many uncertainties out there internationally, nationally, state, local. So have that, but by the same token, we've heard be more liberal and spend the money out there because you'll be under a think about you're saving money, you're not spending it. So I'm curious on philosophy and whether this beats that.
So let me try to resolve the apparent conflict as I see it. We have an operating revenue and expense issue, and then we have our reserves and capital. And you can't fix an operating problem with reserves. You shouldn't try to fix it with reserves. Similarly, you shouldn't let that operating problem drive you away from what would be an otherwise prudent reserve strategy. So there is this contradiction where we have this financial pressure over here that is serious and dire, needs to be addressed, but we're not going to fix it by, being more conservative and hoarding our reserve money. That's just not the way to fix the problem. So I think accepting a little more risk and dropping our reserve policies down to a more reasonable level, and therefore getting a better view of what our genuine reserves are for those one-time and strategic investments is still appropriate. And it's not entirely separate, but it is distinct enough of an issue from our operating issue. So being worried and conservative on operating makes sense, but accepting slightly different outlook on the reserves also makes sense. And those seem to be kind of like playing to different impulses, but I think they still make sense.
I guess when I think about it, I agree with what Michael says. And then when you have reserves that are in excess of our annual budget, we have so much reserve that and it's taxpayer money. It's supposed to be put to good use, not just create interest for us. We don't need an endowment fund. So it is nice to have interest income, but so I think again, if we had reserves of 10 million, I'd have a whole different conversation here, but we have reserves of excess of 40 or 50 million.
Do you see that balance reflected in here, Michael, when you're?
I like this reserve policy. Okay. And I think we also talked about, I think it was the memo, let's play it a little tighter, but obviously monitor it, twice a year report on cash balances. I mean, we're not going to set this policy and forget it.
Yeah. But I think as Shauna mentioned too, we're actually going to have those color coded things that we talked about in the last discussion on this in each quarter. So track it and have more substantive discussion.
Scott,
Okay.
Michael,
Yeah.
I hear both of you. Sorry, I can't see if anyone is talking. And I think you hit on exactly the dilemma that Les and I have had is how much cash is too much in reserves, and how much is too much that's just kind of undesignated. So we do have a couple things that'll help guide us. We've got the 60 days operating, so that's the operating budget. And then we'll have our fleet reserve policy, our fleet reserve, which we have a projection out almost 40 years on fleet. So we can really cost that out. It really won't take into effect new technology, but we can look at what will it cost to keep our fleet in a state of good repair. And we can make some adjustments to that. Well, the 5307 money will help that out a bit. And then the capital is the other piece that we'll have control over. And we're working quite hard with our capital improvement program on what are upcoming maintenance things that we want to take care of and not defer. So I think we'll have good plans that will help inform the board of what the reserves would look like. And then we can have discussion about what do we include in the budget and in the next 5 years that will help drive the reserve. So I think maybe what I'm hearing is a little bit more visibility into what the reserves are funding, and then the board will have input to weigh in on that. But also, I agree, we can't solve our day-to-day revenue and expense problem with reserves and one-time money. So we're trying to straddle that line the best that we can. So this is helping, I think, Les and I get to a point where we understand a little bit better and more clearly on the board's appetite.
Go ahead.
my question is, now that Bellingham City Council is moving forward and approved like the locally preferred alternative, that's more than $100 million of infrastructure investments necessary to realize that. So how does our reserves play into that? And what's the conversation look like around those obligations to realize?
So Mayor Lind, I think it's two-pronged. We'll have to lay out sort of the near and longer term tasks and attach costs to those. And then we could plan on saving money. So when we're ready to spend something in 2030, we've saved enough money for that. And I think we'll be looking for grant funding to help us support a lot of those projects. It would be difficult, in my opinion, to fund those just locally with our tax dollars without grant funding.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
If I can add something too, I think there's some pre-work to get to that point of specificity around costs. So the LPA had sort of high level back of the it's more than back of the envelope, but just high level order of magnitude costs for various items. And I think right now we're continuing to work with your staff on being more specific around some of the costs. For example, the tier 1 bus stops, which were the high level bus stop program, and getting a better sense of the cost because it's very specific to the location. And so we're going to have to go through that more specific work to understand what is the true cost, and then that could feed into reserve. That could feed into our revenue needs and our grant needs at that level. So again, there's a bit more work that we couldn't just do it because it's very specific, very on the ground kind of work that needs to happen with some of those elements that came out of the LPA.
I guess my high level feelings around that are to Scott's point, we have a considerable balance in the reserves, but I wouldn't want to disperse them for short term just to disperse them when we know we have this very significant long term need on the horizon. So I just want to be mindful of our commitments around the LPA.
So following that,
That's capitalized.
Yeah, we just adopted our TIP and a transit program in there with a large dollar and some uncertainty on the funding. I was dismayed at how far out it is, but the groundwork you're talking about, getting specific on the plans, on the cars, getting them grant eligible, getting those grants and implementing them. So the time frame, unfortunately, I think is realistic. But that's the sort of investment that's not quite one time, but they're startup, big upfront cost. Some of that is capital-like. That then goes to what we talked about earlier. These are ways of potentially growing and attracting ridership without necessarily expanding our system and incurring more operational expenses in the long run. We're running the same routes better, faster, and hopefully with more riders. So that seems like an appropriate capital investment.
Absolutely.
Which I look at these reserves, strategic aspects of it. I think that's appropriate.
Would the board feel comfortable adopting the policy as presented, or would you like us to bring it back?
We'll hold the reserve policy as presented.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor of approving the reserve policy, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna have a 15-minute break. Or do we want to do?
Maybe let's take a 15-minute break, and then we can see if we can get a hold of Plan Bar, see if they can come on a little early.
Okay.
Not that we can adjust.
Sounds good. All right, on break till 9:45.
Wow.
That's it.
Do you want me to contact Zena?
Sorry for waiting.
Yeah.
Repairs done.
You're so good at that.
See you all in 2 weeks.
Well, all right. Item F4, Circle of Care Program update.
Before we hop into that, could I just do a quick introduction?
Yeah.
We have the honor of a new IT director, Andy Mosley. I wanted to introduce Andy. Andy's been with WTA for 12 plus years now. Yeah, in a variety of roles. It's been obviously a great job, but has a really great vision, I think, for the future of IT as complexity of technology changes and so forth. Has a real grasp and been thinking a lot about that and how IT and support WTA in the community. So welcome forward. Well, not welcome forward. You've been here for a long time, but welcome to the new role. Meaningfully. All right, sorry for that starting off. Thank you on Circle Care. Dina hopped on early. Sorry for doing that. Thank you for your flexibility.
That's okay. Good morning.
I'll turn it over to Shonda to kick us off, please.
Okay.
Thanks. Good morning again. Hi, Dina. Nice to see
Hi,
you.
Shonda.
So we just wanted to provide a little bit of an update that actually Tim did a great intro on our partnership with the Point Roberts Circle of Care. And the way that we ended up with this partnership is a while ago, back before the pandemic,
Hey, Shonda, maybe do you want to turn off your camera? Maybe that'll help.
service.
You're breaking up. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
So after the pandemic, with the border closed, we were unable to service Point Roberts. And then also WISTIP, our insurance provider, informed us that they were not able to insure us to go into Canada any longer. So we looked at getting commercial insurance. That was quite complicated. We do have Miranda Loretta. She lives part-time in Point Roberts. So she knows Dina and Chris and Louise, and they started talking about partnering with WTA. So what we ended up doing was signing an agreement in April of 2024 to test pilot a project for 6 months. WTA provided a van and $11,250 per quarter in operating funds. And then Circle of Care really takes that van and runs the program. They hire drivers, they schedule rides, and they maintain the van. And the project has been very successful. You can see from this slide the contributions to date, and then also some details on trips, riders, miles. And we've renewed the contract through April of 2008 because it's going so well. And we have with us on the phone Dina Boyque, Chris Cameron, and Louise Cassidy. And I'm going to turn it over to them, and they can share some more perspectives on how the Raven Band is working with the community. I think Dina was going to share some Q2 statistics, and then allow the board to answer questions, as I think we're looking at this possibly as a model to serve some of our other communities that is difficult to service with fixed route. So Dina, I'll send it over to you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So it's been fabulous for our community having the Raven. We have a lot of people that are elderly or don't drive beyond the point because it's very small and it's a safe place to drive. Going through 2 borders is a bit daunting. Also, there's a lot of people that don't have family members. They're alone. So there's no one they rely on to getting medical appointments, getting prescriptions, even getting groceries. So it's been great. And I think the community's been, they're slow to train to get used to a new idea and that this is a valuable service. And it's really picked up when I did the numbers of our first quarter, which we started in July 2nd of 24, through September of 24, compared with the first quarter of this year. We had 47 riders in our first quarter of 24. This last quarter, we had 137 riders. So it's grown exponentially to the point where we've had a few times where we have had to say no to people because we're full. And yeah, so I will, excuse me. Yeah, I mean, it's been so welcome. And it's also amazing as far as staffing goes. We're on our third dispatcher, and you send a message out to the community thinking who's going to be there in the small town of 800 that can actually fill this position. And it's amazing to see that the people that come forward and embrace. Anyway, any questions?
If I may, I'd like to add that in addition to getting people from A to B and C to D, the Raven has also helped foster community in that when people are riding in the van together, it's inevitable. You're going to chat, you're going to talk about what's going on, and you can and have, people will make friends. And this is essential. In a very small community, you'd be surprised how isolated people can become. So I can speak very highly of that aspect of it. And also the fact that we do we do pick up students from Blaine High School, and that allows them to take part in after-school activities, because otherwise they'd all have to come back on the school bus and they would miss things like football and theater, music, and all of those extra activities. And it frees the parents up from having to shift their schedules to go get their children. And that, speaking as a parent, that is a big deal. So I can speak very proudly of this project. And I also want to say thank you so much to WTA, because you've been very, very supportive, and we're very lucky. So thank you. And now we need something a bit bigger. We'll get to that. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
I respect it.
It's a good point, and we're actively trying to think through how can we do that. So the folks that you heard from have been great partners. They've taken a program from zero to what you see here in a small community is quite a tribute to them and their community service and their heart for that community.
Is it a free ride, or is there a cost associated with it?
It's free. Yeah.
It's free.
One of the other services that we provide is on Fridays, we provide rides for people to the food bank and to do errands in town. So it's a 4-hour window where people can book the van to come and pick them up at home and take them to the community center. They get community with the seniors lunch. They get the food bank, then they can go to the bank, they can go to the grocery store and back home again. And that one is where we're finding problems with mobility issues, people who have mobility issues. So we have to take people one at a time because we only have the one front seat where somebody can get into. And we recently had to buy a footstool to help people get into the van. So it is very popular on Fridays. It's a full 4-hour shift for someone when they do the Friday run.
And so we are trying to think through, is there different ways we can help with that as they're running into those challenges, because that van was designed for those mobility challenges. So the great thing about doing these kinds of things is you start learning and seeing different things, but how do you solve those problems? So.
Yeah, because the footstool we got actually has an 18-inch base, so they can pivot their bodies, and it has a handle. And I don't know what other vans offered that would facilitate getting into like the second row of seats, but that is a huge thing. Like we do, even with scheduling trips to Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have to be cognizant of who needs a ride, because we have to see if they fit in the van, more so than even sometimes getting through the border in time for appointments. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know what the answer to that is, what the options are.
But thank you for highlighting it, because we've been trying to talk internally about are there some options?
And the other thing too to remember is that if a person does have mobility issues and they do have a friend that wants to come with them to help, that's another seat taken in the van. And again, something a little larger would be a big help. that would allow for caregivers or family or friends to travel to help their less able friend or family member.
When I hear things about Point Roberts, I'm so grateful for the work you're doing, but I also think of Lummi Island and wonder if there's anything, any thoughts about any similar kind of service for that.
Do you want to talk a little bit about, we do provide service out there. One of the challenges of Point Roberts, as Shauna mentioned, was that we just couldn't provide any service out there. And so there is a service that goes out. We have our old Linden Hub that runs out, plus our paratransit, right? But there are challenges with fitting on when the ferry.
Well, the reason I asked is, well, like it's a like type of community, but also we did get a lot of input, I guess is the best way to describe it, from the community a few months ago about I think it was during the flood time.
Yeah, we heard during the ferry issues, and we, quite honestly, we did offer to provide a van. And told no thank you.
Really? Yeah, there was a miscue there somehow because there were a lot of people that didn't feel that way.
Well, I think one of the things that credit to our Circle of Care friends is they've stepped up to say, okay, we'll run this. We can take this on and do that. And that's one of the challenges is when you identifying a gap in service, who's going to help step in to do that. Jeff lives on Lummi Island.
Barry, you're referring to when dry dock was going to be scheduled.
Dry dock, yeah. When it got changed, right?
For 3 weeks, the Whatcom chief will be out for service, and then that's when Les indicated we offered up a van to try and help with transportation on the island, and that was they weren't interested.
Yeah, that's.
Sorry, this is Louise speaking. One of the reasons I think that our program is successful is because it's not volunteer. The drivers are paid a full day's wage, whether they drive or not. That gives us consistent drivers and buy-in from the staff. The scheduler and Dina, the administrator, they get paid as contractors based on the hours that they work. So far, I'm the only one that's kind of been volunteer, which we're going to do a meeting about because I do all the book work and the bills and everything. So my hours aren't included in our financials and actually should be. But for Lummi or for other places, if you let them know that, this isn't based on volunteers, this is paid positions, guaranteed hours. And it helps the community have more local economy because of it. So it's a win-win on all sides.
I just have a comment or a question about the border issue. Are all of these people, do they have a Nexus pass or not?
No, they don't. And that is one of the challenges for scheduling. We do check that they have valid passports because they do try to sometimes ride without those, but no, they don't have to. It's not necessary to have a Nexus card at all. So,
and particularly for the next 2 months, getting across that border is going to be a nightmare, even with a Nexus pass. So, yeah, that's an issue.
Yeah, so we do take that into account with scheduling and appointments and just let everyone know that it's, we have to leave this far in advance. Don't schedule your appointments before like 11:30 in the morning, right? Even leaving at 9 o'clock. So at least, or even noon. And it makes a longer day, but that's okay.
So how much does Circle of Care support this beyond the 45,000 from WTA?
Basically, it's my time is all the Circle of Care input.
So you pay all the salaries of the drivers and your other people with that 45,000?
Yes. And we have a little bit of a contingency for repairs and maintenance.
And they pay insurance as well.
Yep. Oh, yeah. No, it's fully insured, serviced, cleaned, logos all over it.
But, and gas and 2 cell phones. We have one that dispatcher has and one in the van, which also allows us to track the van. So, yeah. Mhm.
I compliment you on stretching 45,000
Yeah.
better than anybody.
Circle of Care is very good at stretching.
Well, I just appreciate the opportunity to hear and learn more about this program. It seems wonderful in so many ways. So well done.
Thank you. And,
Thank
and
you.
we're willing to help another community get set up. I've got, the financials are really easy to do. They're not complicated, very simple bookkeeping. The scheduler and Dina can definitely train someone on it. We've got all our procedures in place. We're just waiting for Les to do a little review of them to make sure we're in compliance with laws and stuff. And so yeah, it's going to be easy to replicate in another community if they've got the bodies to do it.
And I believe too that we're always happy to go and talk about the non-tangible aspects of doing something like this, because there is a great deal more to it than simply getting people, as I say, from A to B, and the community needs to understand that there is value in this beyond the transport aspect, and that can sometimes get lost in the oh, we don't want to part.
Yeah, no, and I would be happy to help. I think what's been so beneficial is we have a really caring staff. We have a group chat, and being a small community, you really have to care for the people you're trying to transport first. It's not just a job. And so we try to facilitate everything we can for them. And in hiring those people, is what's really made the program a success, right? So, because we can all work as a really great team. It's very kind of works really well.
So Les, if you're reviewing the finances, I guess I as board member would like to see that and how well it's working. And so can you forward whatever you get to the board? That would be great. And is this a 7-day-a-week program? Or does it have hours per day, or how much? What are your limits?
Okay, so we actually, the way we run it is we cut off reservations on Monday at 6 p.m. leave at 9 o'clock in the morning from the community center. If people need picking up at home, we will do it before 9 a.m.
Tuesdays and Thursdays, right?
Tuesdays, for Tuesdays and Thursdays. Well, the cutoff is Wednesday at 6. And then, so it's Tuesdays and Thursdays to Bellingham. Friday is our community day, which starts at 9 a.m., bringing people to the food bank. And they usually finish just after senior lunch, so about 1 o'clock, dropping people back at home. So it's 3 days.
Yeah. And basically Tuesday and Thursday is a 7-hour shift. And lately it's been stretching to 7.5 hours and 8 due to the volume of people. And then Friday is the 4-hour.
Which we have been going over there as well, just because of mobility challenges and people. There's a lot of people utilizing it on Fridays. So it's, getting to 5 hours some days.
Scott, I'll send those financials out to the board when I return. We have them by quarter, so you can see how it's changed over the quarter since we started.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Shonda.
Michael would like a graph.
A graph with 5 points of data. I can do that.
Colors.
Colors.
But not too close together. Thank you so much, you guys. Is there any other questions or discussion?
Thank you for hopping on early.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries.
Not a problem.
No worries.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Gina,
Thank you.
Louise, and
All right.
Chris.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, item F 5, workforce challenges discussion.
Yeah, this is a teed up for discussion. No action come with this, but daylight some issues that WTA, I think many of the home jurisdictions are facing as well. But to highlight that, so what I was hoping to do is kind of talk a little bit about the problem, a little bit about the root causes on that, some of the threats that go along with that, and kind of our analysis on whether the challenges of blip, trend, a new operating environment, because those all have very different outcomes on how you handle those and what we're trying to assess. Kim and Eric have some information to provide a factual grounding on the discussion. And then, because we never want to come to you with problems and not have potential solutions or options, I'll say, we'd like to propose some options for consideration. There's a lot of details and things that are very conceptual ideas and options. There's a lot of details that would have to go into that, but and then would respectfully request that kind of ruminate on those, and then in August we'll talk more about those and see whether the board is comfortable going farther and trying to put those in the budget, and talking more about what the framework and details that would go with those options. So if that sounds okay, we'll jump into it. Have some time. So
yeah.
So the problems that we're seeing, and I think many of your home jurisdictions are seeing it as well, is that it just simply takes more people to provide the same level of service, and that's the work is more complex. And where we're seeing that, looking at what is the root causes of this, it's a variety of things. Some within your control, some without, not in our control. And one of the things, and these are in no particular order, is increased leave laws, and the ability to use those means that more folks are out, and you have to try to provide the same level of service with less people on that. Other things are complexity of things. Having two bus manufacturers as outcomes of it takes longer to get buses. Trying to get warranty work is harder. We're seeing with consolidation of those OEMs that workmanship isn't as great as what it used to be, which then translates to our poor mechanics having more work to do and more complicated work, because these buses have become more complex, that they're driving computers in many regards on those things. They are no longer diesel repairs in many cases. They're computer repairs, electronics repairs, and those things which are all much more complicated to do. The warranty work, because those industries are consolidating as well, and so they're not local. They have to come from longer distances, which means scheduling is harder. They've shrunk, so there's not as many people coming to do those things, which then puts a greater on our folks as well. And the complexity of technology on things causes issues as well. So we've been trying to, we talked a little bit about this last year at one of the workshops. We were still in the stage of trying to figure out, okay, are these things blips on the screen that you work through? Are they trends to monitor? Or is it a new operating environment that causes you to have to work differently and think differently? Each of those things that I talked about, root causes, are kind of at different stages on those things. The absences, as we'll talk about, and I think as you'll see, we'll feel pretty comfortable saying that's a new operating reality that we have. And want to be very clear that the absences are they're good leaves. They're people doing good things, having babies and getting fixed medically, because this can be a rough job on folks physically and so forth. And so it's not to say anything negative about people taking their leaves. I don't want to have that implicitly because people are doing what's authorized. But that is a new operating reality that we have to deal with. The OEMs, the consolidation there seems to be a new operating reality that we have to deal with on that. And as you think back on some of the things we've been doing, like drawing down the 5307, is to provide us some flexibility on those going into the future, so we can look at the different manufacturers and try to figure some of those things out. Some of the other things to look at on those that are not, I think, moving from trends to operating realities are the technologies and our work philosophies on how we do things. Things that we may have done 10 years ago may not be the same way now. Doing all our tech work in-house may have made sense before cloud service, those things. So our work philosophy needs to be revised to see that's a new operating environment reality to work through. So those are kind of the threats. The outcomes from these is that it takes more people to do the same amount of work. And so we'll talk about some of the options that we can look at to try to solve some of these. And some of this involves reserves and taking the board philosophy of one-time money for one-time things. So some of those solutions looked at it at that way. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is build some capacity to meet that service, those service demands, while aligning our strategy and execution and resourcing on those things. I worry about morale. I worry about burnout. I worry about the work environment. We've got a lot of really good people that have really big hearts that work here for the community. And as you press on these things, it gets harder and harder to do that. I worry about them and the burnout, those things. So it's important for us to talk about these things because they do have outcomes on how we operate and how we move forward. And I feel like I have a fiduciary duty to talk about this as hard as it can be. So with that, we both, Eric and Kim, have looked at some factual statistics on how things are going to see whether this is a new operating environment. Much of what you'll see on this supports that it is a new operating environment. So that's going to mean we have differently on how we approach resourcing strategy, alignments, our work philosophies, and so talk a little bit more about that and potential options on that. I'll turn it over to Eric.
We're pretty much done, I think.
Well, I think some of these things are striking to demonstrate that this is not a blip on the screen that we need to work through, but rather we have to think differently and approach things creatively to meet our new operating environment. I'm probably not saying anything new to many of you. You're seeing this in your home jurisdictions as well. So,
yeah, thanks, Les. Yeah, I mean, I think that was going to be my lead-in. I don't think this will come as much of a surprise to those of you in your roles and what you see. But we did want to circle back last year at this. I think it was at this meeting I shared some initial evaluation of our statistics and operations. And the statistics that you're going to see here are primarily our transit operators, our dispatchers, our expediters, who are the folks who work downtown and at the Coronado Station, as well as our trainees. So it represents about 210 of our 320 or so total employees, and a large portion of our operations staff. So we're gonna get going here, and I learned a new acronym just this week, which is BLUF, which is the bottom line up front. Rochelle, if you want to keep cruising through here on the slides. So here's what I'm going to talk about. Our FTE count in operations has not kept up with the increased staffing need. Absences have increased through use of leave. Effectively, as Les mentioned, it takes more people to perform the same amount of work. The amount of work is also increased in both fixed route and paratransit. And my opinion is staff are overworked, and we are seeing that service is at risk because of that. So we're going to break that down. We'll start with absences. And big picture, as Les mentioned, I think our absence rate has increased and appears to have shown a new normal. The use of PFML is the single largest contributor to that increase over the last 5 years. Vacation and other leave have remained relatively flat. And so the increase is really related to sick-related absences, specifically PFML. We'll look a little bit about what that looks like. So last year, I showed you this chart, which was our total absences. Michael, there's 80,000 too many data points on this chart for you. So let's just focus on the lines.
And a lot of color.
So on the far left is 2016, June of 2016. On the far right was June of 2025. And you see pre-pandemic, our total absence rate was about 18% of our daily assigned staff had absences. Don't get lost in the colors at this point. The huge spikes in the middle, not surprising, COVID. And so really that 2022 time after the pandemic to last year, 2025, showed this general increase up to about 25%. So the next slide shows what happened from January of 2025 to May of 2026, which is, Rochelle, if you keep going, pretty flat, but at that same 25%. So what we have seen is a general leveling off of absences, but at this new higher rate. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to look back. This is our vacation, our union business, and sort of the miscellaneous non-sick related absences. Pretty flat. Part of that is because we have contractual restrictions on how many folks can take vacation at any given time. So there's just some natural barriers and guidelines around that. About 10.5% from 2016 to 2025. Rochelle, next slide, please. And you'll see that same number continues. You'll see the spike over the summer as we have more vacation slots, more people take vacation. And then in the shoulder seasons, there's a bit more or a bit fewer people taking vacation. The next one is the one that I think is the most important for this conversation, which is our sick-related absences. So this is sick leave, this is L&I leave, this is LWOP, which is where we track the PFML, because on our side, it's considered unpaid time because they're being paid from the state, and it's FMLA time. So pre-pandemic, it was rising a little bit up to about 7% in 2019, but post-pandemic is really where we've seen this increase up to nearly 15%. And so Rochelle, next slide, we'll see that, again, that number has relatively leveled off right around that 15%. So that's where this new normal we're seeing. The use of sick leave has effectively doubled in the most recent 5 years since the pandemic. So what? Rochelle?
Let that hang out.
So this is a little bit of a recap of what I just touched on. I think what's really important for this group to be aware of is that we at any given time average 3.5 folks on long-term absence. Those are absences that are 4 weeks or longer. Some of those up to a year plus. What does that mean? That 3.5 FTE pretty consistently that we do not have available to deliver service. That's not 3.5 people, it's just 3.5 FTE. And that has a big impact on our ability to deliver that service. And then the graph on the left shows the percentage of our absences by type. And what's really interesting is that gray line, which is that LWOP PFML line, last year in 2025 eclipsed sick leave for the first time. So that means we had folks on unpaid absence more than folks using their paid sick leave for the first time. Again, big portion of that related to PFML. And you'll see the vacation percentage of absences continues to drop. The little 2026, take that data for what it's worth. It's just the first 5 months compared to full years. So just thought I'd throw that in there. Next slide, please, Rochelle. So another impact on our operations staffing is the amount of work that we have to provide. We had a fixed route service increase in 2025. We have seen gradual increase to our paratransit service hours over time. And then we've also made an emphasis on operator training. Last year, we increased the amount of training time for our staff by 700 total hours. And that ODAT is our one-day annual training. This is an emphasis of the training department to get all of our transit operators off the road for a day of intensive training on de-escalation, safe driving skills. There's some policy related things. There's ADA component in that. But it was important to us that we're making sure that we're keeping priority on training for our frontline staff.
Part of that is to gain efficiencies as well on some of these things, on how people are handling what they're equipped to be able to handle things. So it's an important, and I guess I'd say bullet 2 as well is one of those things that, somewhat in our thing is also very much outside of our ability to control. People moving in into corridors that have paratransit don't control as populations go up. So we all know from like Council on Aging, that group is increasing significantly, which becomes a paratransit heavier users. And so there's a number of things that go underneath each of those that we need to, as we're looking at how do you, in a new operating environment, work through those.
Thanks, Les. Okay. Rochelle, next slide, please. Okay, so in 2025, I mentioned we did do the increase of fixed route service hours. We did at the time address that with 7 new FTE. Fixed route is relatively straightforward when we're looking at what's it going to cost, what's the FTE required to do new service. We have a ratio of revenue hours to people, and we're able to do that. The new service costs added 7 new FTEs. We've also really been working with our run cut team who design the work within the contractual rules that we have to create as efficient work as we possibly can. And so we're finding a little bit of efficiencies in that. Paratransit has increased by 7,000 revenue hours over the last 2 years, so 2023 to 25. So you've probably seen this data in the performance report. I just brought it in here. In 2024, we did an emphasis on training for our staff on paratransit efficiency. This was a way that we could try to stem the tide of the increased hours by delivering more efficient service. And it doesn't look like a lot, that boardings per hour going from 3.0 to 3.1, but that's actually pretty significant when you multiply that out over the course of every ride, throughout the course of the year. That helped us to stem that increasing tide of paratransit rides. I'm actually super proud of the operators, the dispatchers, for their work in creating a more efficient service. And for context, if you look at the NTD data, the last data that we had, the full aggregate report was from 2024. That 3.1 is the highest of any agency our size or larger in the state. So pretty proud of the team for the work that they're doing in delivering really efficient service. However, you will see those boardings have increased by 14%. Revenue hours have increased by 12%. It is just a growing demand on our service. And we have not addressed that directly with any increase to our FTE count. It's a bit of a more hidden impact. Fixed route, we know going in, it's going to be this many hours. This is what it'll take. Paratransit just grows. It just grows. And so the amount of service that we're asked to provide continues to grow. And we right now don't turn away rides. We take them and we deliver those rides. We did back in 2023, it's worth noting, we did increase and create the Blaine Birch Bay corridor of paratransit. We did bring on 3 FTE at that time to help support that service, but that doesn't address the 24-25. Next slide, please, Rochelle. So I found this interesting. You may not. From 24 to 25, our total hours for that work group went up by 24,500. Because our absence rate continues to increase, the percentage of our total hours allocated towards absences also continues to increase. And you can see it was up to that 20%. 20% of our total time allocated is going towards absences, as opposed to about 15% back in 2017, which means out of the total time, we're getting less work out of it. So next slide. So what is the impact? Well, our overtime hours are up because we're asking people to work above and beyond. Our extra board hours, I'll talk a little bit about that. And I believe there's significant increased risk to our mission of delivering safe, reliable, efficient, friendly service. So here's a little graph of our overtime hours. Up to 32,500 for context. Our total hours was 440,000 last year, for those 210 folks that I was talking about. And that was a 30% increase over 24, which again, 1 year trends aren't super trends, but if you look at the line coming out of the pandemic, that number has continued to increase. I think maybe what's more impactful or more visual is this next slide, which is our extra board. For context, we have a group of employees whose sole job is to fill in absences for when we have transit operators who are off on leave or in training. As you all know, when somebody takes vacation, we need somebody driving that bus. That's our extra board work group. Makes up about a third of our employee group right now. Little less than, about a quarter rather. But what you can see here is the average hours per extra board employee. So this is aggregated over all of our extra boarders every month. How much are they working on average? And it continues to increase up to about 45 and a half hours per employee. Now that's fine if you're the employee that's working 45 hours, but of that group, we have folks that are on a week's worth of vacation. So that's 40 hours a day. We have folks that are on long-term leave, unpaid status. That's 40 hours allocated there. This also means that we have people that are working 60 hours, 65 hours to make up that difference. Everything below the line and above 40 hours is overtime. Ideally, I would love to see this number around 42 hours. I think a lot of folks want the access to overtime. It's actually more efficient for us to pay overtime for folks. But when we're getting up above 43, 44 hours, we're really working people hard week in, week out. And there's secondary challenges around coverage and scheduling that calls into question. So next slide, please, Rochelle. So what are the impacts? Well, I think we have safety concerns, whether it's causational or correlated. We have seen an increase in the amount of minor preventable accidents and incidents that we've had. We don't have direct data to say it's because people are overworked or tired or lack of focus, but we've seen an increase. I have big concerns over burnout and what the burnout impact is to customer service, to that friendliness aspect. I know when I'm tired, I'm grumpy. I might be grumpy all the time, but certainly when I'm tired. More absenteeism with burnout. If you're feeling tired, you're going to be more likely to take time off, and you're going to be more likely to say, I just can't do it anymore, and leave the agency. And we're losing good people because of that. And I do think that has a big impact on morale. We also are seeing an increase in canceled service. Now, my apologies, we're going to be tracking this now. We didn't have really good ways to track this at this level of detail prior to the beginning of this year. But so far in 2026, we've canceled 53 hours of fixed route service. So that means if you were waiting at the bus stop during one of those 53 hours, that bus never showed up. Now, in some cases, the next bus is coming. If it's around Western, it's coming 5-10 minutes later. If you're in Blaine, that bus isn't coming for another 2 hours, right? So it's tough to aggregate the impact of that, but it's worth knowing that we're canceling fixed route service because we just don't have the coverage for it. What we more often will do is we'll cancel paratransit service first. And so we're taking an 8-hour piece of work or a 4-hour piece of work out of our service delivery for the day. It'll get absorbed by the rest of the work, by the rest of the team out there, but it does have an impact on on-time performance. And so that's where we're seeing that on-time performance having a slight dip because of that. It also, overworking our staff also has the impact on diminished training time and availability. When we're faced with, do we pull people for training or do we deliver service? We're going to err on the side of delivering service, which means we just have less time for training. And then we also get a lot of requests to provide additional community service, Sea Feast, Camp Casey trips, the Blaine, Birch Bay, Sandcastle, the name of the festival. Anyway, we get a lot of those requests, and we love being able to provide that service, those kind of one-time need service. But again, if we're faced with delivering on our transit guide service that we need to do on every day, or this additional service, it just calls that into question, into risk. And so I think there's a lot of potential impacts there. Okay, So I made this acronym up,
That's fine.
which is the bottom line at the end. Maybe it needs a T, the blades. So again, FTE count has not kept up with the increased staffing needs. Absences have increased. The amount of work is increased, and staff are overworked and service the risk operations. I'm concerned about it. I'm very concerned. So I appreciate you all hearing that. Happy to answer questions or
I just have a comment. Our police department are very new police officers. A lot of them are younger, therefore they are going to be taking these family leaves off. We can have them away for up to 9 months a year because they run one after the other. And if you've only got 10 officers and you have a young population of officers who are more likely to be looking at family leave, it is a disaster. And talk about overtime. It's really, really difficult. It puts a lot of stress on our police staffing. And so we have addressed this to our lobbyists over and over again, saying, you need to understand that a big city like Seattle, no problem, but in a small city like Blaine, it is a huge problem. We need some accommodation.
So you mentioned it just briefly about departures, but that's such a key element in this whole discussion is turnover.
Yeah.
And I didn't see any stats correlations from turnover to your kind of bottom line issues.
Yeah. So departures do tend to come in clumps for whatever reason. It's really interesting to watch. We have about an 11% departure rate year over year from our transit operator work group. We have not seen a direct correlation of more work and more departures in that. And of that departures, I'm really proud that a portion of about 40% of that is internal promotions. So we're losing them as transit operators, but we're gaining a dispatch systems coordinator or a dispatcher or a supervisor. But it's out there.
And that one of the things where we're trying to get ahead of this, we anticipate this being a big problem. And
leading to that.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And that pushes across the organization. So for example, to HR, you have that constant churn, your people are departing and you're doing exit interviews and those kinds of things. And then you got a new hiring process.
So you're always training on the front end of the curve.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so you're just chasing your tail.
Yeah.
And I think we'll talk about training in a little bit as well.
It'd be interesting to know though on your longevity, is it trending down overall longevity? I guess of the operators, and that is a
good question. Yeah.
But I think we're left, a lot of our operators are less than 5 years now, which does correlate. We've talked about this, Jeff, with the minor accidents.
I would say over 50% of our operators are 0 to 5 years of experience driving.
Which is, I think very different than we could get that information, but yeah.
Yes, to Barry's point and so forth is how do we give people hope that we're trying to work on this and trying to make things better, because they're going to have a decision point at some point of, for even those that are close to retirement may have been here for a while. It's like, oh, do I retire now or will I wait? And so trying to figure out ways to give them hope that, okay, this may be tough to get through, but we can do this. And I see that we're trying.
Is that incremental 7% that I saw earlier, is that unpaid by WTA leave? And if so, do we see a lower labor cost that we could hire people with that money to backfill?
The way you think, Scott.
Yes. I mean, you look at the amount of time that that our staff are on an unpaid long-term leave. It is significant. And so when we look at our budget, we have two constraints on our budget, if I may. One is our FTE count, how many people we have on the books, and then we have dollars. And those two things do not always line up. If we have people on our books that are in unpaid status, then our dollars are significantly lower. The impact of service, however, is still at risk. And so I think there's some conversations to be had in the future.
Do you have scenarios? You alluded to scenarios for the board to kind of think through. Are we going to get a preview of those today or?
Yes, no, we will
Okay.
talk about ideas for solutions, whether they're good, but that I think deserve discussion and potential exploration on how to implement.
But if your employee group is 210 that you talked about, and 7% is about 15 FTEs not here, if we're saving that 15 FTE, can we hire 15 people to?
Yeah,
and then we're going to lose 7% of those too, but all right.
It is important to recognize from a financial standpoint that it's not a one-to-one, because we're paying overtime for that work. It is, from a true dollar standpoint, it is more effective to pay overtime for work performed than to have an FTE that has leave and absences on top of their sort of their time and work package. However, there's a ratio within that.
Do we pay benefits as well, or did
it depends.
It
depends on
if we're paying benefits, then it's not a one-to-one deal.
Right.
Go a little more depth.
Well, it depends on how someone enters the leaves and what they're qualified for. I think it's a better planning assumption that they will continue benefits. There's been a change to the state law and PFML. In most cases, we're going to continue benefits. So we use about a 40% ratio for benefits now. You probably.
Now you can only hire 6 people.
Yeah, exactly. Four or five.
I know that with PMFL, it's optional to the employer to require employees to use some of their standing PTO before that kicks in, or a percentage, over time. Are those things that we're looking into or discussions we're having? I feel like, 90% probably of the PMFL, right? It's like they super need that day, they super need that week, whatever it is. But like, I don't know, would it discourage people from, taking an extra day just because it's like, well, I have it here, I might as well. Or, even just having kind of that little bit in the back of their head, like, okay, I'm going to be able to take this week, but it's going to take a day or two of PTO to get that week. And I know that that's not going to make me very many friends, but I, just thinking about, I don't know how to give people a little bit of pause when they're deciding what to do, I guess. Because, I want to think that everybody needs every minute that they're taking off, but I don't. As somebody who worked in employment and finding people jobs for 13 years, I didn't find that to be the case all the time.
Yeah. I wouldn't say we're studying that specific question yet, but back when this law came into effect, WTA made that choice to go that direction. So we haven't looked at that specific narrow question around requiring the use of leave. I will say the sick leave laws make that pretty difficult to require that use. We can't require the use of sick leave. We could require the use of vacation. And of course, we have our collective bargaining agreement that creates another consideration. So we could look at least allowing it, because sometimes that's a decision point for an employee as well. As do I even want to go down the path of applying for PFML, or do I want to use my leave? You don't receive other benefits like your retirement credits and things like that when you're on an unpaid status with us. So it is a consideration. So, but currently we don't allow it. My guess is the tracking of it and the payroll and tax component is probably pretty cumbersome. Does any agency allow the use of PTO during PFML that you know of? Yeah, it's not common. It's much more common to have it be an unpaid status completely, but it is allowable. Yeah.
I have heard of some employers who, because you can require people to use their PTO before PMFL kicks in. That seems extreme to me, but
yeah, I don't know if there was some middle ground that would just make people, I don't know, consider just a little bit more. Like, do I really,
We did some work during the collective bargaining process around leave usage and had considerations like that where, not exactly what you're describing, but basically encouraging creating a reserve for folks. It's like, don't only go down to this amount. The details of it are not top of mind. So if you have questions on it, I'd be happy to get there. But this was a big part of our bargain was around leave usage and our concerns with it. So we did a significant amount of work in that arena.
I think we should be solving the use of PMFL as as if it's a problem, but adjusting to it as if it's a reality.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's part of our operating environment now. Mm-hmm.
That's where we've come to that conclusion that it's operating.
It's not a choice.
Yeah.
Yes. How do we work with it?
Yeah. Based on the interest of time, Tim has done some work, but essentially it's me too, or us too. But we're falling into that. Do you want to just give a quick?
Sure. So just to give you some statistics from Fleet, on PFML, we have 10 of 18 technicians who are on some form of unpaid leave. It's primarily intermittent and it's PFML. So that's 56%. And so the remaining staff has to absorb that coverage across 3 shifts, Monday through Friday, 2 shifts on the weekend. And unlike operations, we don't have an extra board. So it's relief staff. We run short staffed Monday through Friday, and on the weekends we use overtime. So where that causes us some risk is the FDA requires us to have on-time preventive maintenance checks. And we must bring, for instance, the fixed route bus needs to come in every 6,000 miles with a 6,600 mile not to exceed. If we're 1 minute or 1 mile late, we're late. So we're having trouble getting that in because we just don't have enough staff to get those PMs in on time. So we're falling behind in compliance. The risk for that is corrective action plans. If we fall behind, they'll come in on our training and review and say, we'll put you on a corrective action plan. There'll be
agency, correct?
Agency-wide, yeah. This is for our maintenance portion of the training. They'll give us increased oversight. And then ultimately there could be a risk of federal funding eligibility in the end. Also, service delivery, we need to have a minimum of 2 technicians on staff at any one time. When we can't meet that, we cannot launch service. And we have been at the point where people call in and we only have 1 technician. So we scramble to get a second technician on duty. Otherwise, we're not launching any buses at all. So that's a system-wide disruption. So that's it's a little bit unnerving. And with having all these technicians come in on overtime, we're filling gaps across multiple shifts, leads to employee burnout. I'm worried about safety incidents, maintenance quality issues, and just it leads to additional absences and it's compounding the issues. So as a result, we have compliance issues, we have service delivery issues, and the ability to deliver safe, reliable service. It's all simultaneous.
And the thing is that it's also these other things too. The workmanship comes in not great, so people to do that. So the level of workload is going up, and the level of work people are down, and so we're looking at ways how do we kind of try to right size that.
Is there the opportunity to subcontract some of the simpler tasks to an outside?
Not by union. Yeah,
That would be a
compliment Dan for helping try to think. I mean, we're trying to think of solutions.
That would be in the private sector. That's how you'd solve it for the short term.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's where we're going, but I just want to make sure. Thank Dan that he and his team are trying to think as well as solutions. It affects all of us. We're all in this thing together. So let's kind of why we've come to the conclusion that a lot of these are just our new operating reality, as Michael said. So kind of shifting to more, okay, got the problem, and hopefully we didn't bludgeon you too much with the the rum. But again, as a team, we don't want to come to you with just problems, but here are some ideas that we can explore. I'll go through them kind of as an overview, and then we can dive into those. And obviously, your organizations are going through this as well. So if you have things that you're thinking about and things that would apply, or certainly all ears. So one, and these are in no particular order, one would be to create a long-term leave classification. I'm using the term classification, so I apologize to Vanessa, not in a technical term, but in a category, I guess, maybe a better way of saying it. As you know, we're authorized 326 employees. If we have 3.5 that are on these long-term leaves that are taking a billet that's out driving, could we create something like that where those folks slide into that? So you're still authorized 326, but then you can slide those folks into this other category. So you could go up, 4 people or 5 people or whatever it is to slide into that, with the understanding that those folks, when they clear whatever the issue is, to come back, we do, because we hire quarterly, 8, 9 operators each time. We just lower that one and they would slide back in. So we would still be at our 326, but it would allow us to hire and get more people out actually driving. Really, I don't think that there's much of a financial impact to us to do that, but it would require us moving some or creating a different category or classification.
How about, as a board, can we say 329 is your number, and that with the understanding that 3 are these people? Does that solve the problem?
So potentially, yes. I mean, there's we still then would have some folks that are not being paid. And do you just keep hiring, or do you?
Well, you manage it the same way. You just know that you've got your hidden target is 326, but you got 329 to take care of your deficit 3 that are always out.
And we could kind of riff off that, go to a different one that kind of goes along that lines with the trainees. And because one of the problems is you are always chasing your tail. Is it kind of said, somebody leaves and it takes you 9 months to get somebody back up and running. And so if you have a flexibility on that, with the understanding that 326 is your goal, you can go up a little bit as you're going. You may not be able to rehire because 326 is your goal, but that way, I think like in the mechanic realm, that they need a lot of training. So there's 18, you can go to 19, and then somebody retires and you've now got a fully trained person ready. Well, they've already been working on that, and you go to your 18 again, and then you kind of fluctuate as you're going on that, try to manage that that way. That jumped ahead to a different one, but Eric, do you want to talk about how you do it in operations?
Yeah. So a number of years ago, this is before I stepped into this role, the boards allocated an additional 3 FTE. So if you look really detailed through the budget packet, it says 3 FTE in training for transit operator trainees. What that 3 allows us to do is just that. We can hire ahead. So we're bringing people on early so that through attrition, when they're through their 11-week training period, they're released and into service. It gave us that headroom to train ahead so we could keep that 186 transit operators ideally in service. Well, that number now needs to be 5 from the amount of attrition and the time, right? We have 24 transit operators that are separating from the agency or departing the transit operator role. 11-week training period, the math works out to 5 is that number. And so that would help us keep our in-service operators closer to the number. We average, and it's not surprising, 2 staff to operators in service under our FTE. Like we just can't get there with that training headroom in the way that we've been applying it. And so that would at least that helped to solve another nuanced problem. But again, the goal of getting more in service available operators in the seat that are trained to deliver the service. So the nice thing about that number as well is if we were to hit a period of time where folks don't retire, well, we don't need to utilize that headroom, right? It's only when we're trying to keep up with that attrition. If all of a sudden the attrition goes to half that, then great. We have transit operator classes of 4 or 5 as opposed to 9, and that keeps up, and we're well within that number. But it allows us that opportunity to keep up with what is now our separation rate or departure rate.
So we could look at that, like our target goal is the 326, but we have some flexibility. We could kind of hammer through what that would be, and then what the I was looking at Shonda, but the financial impacts of what that would look like in light of to saving in overtime and other things as well. So we could definitely look at that between now and the August workshop.
On training, as far as on the mechanic side and the technical side, are there, since the consolidation of the OEMs, have they provided any assistance in consolidating training materials for you to put out into the workforce?
Not so much.
Or, you know, I kind of thought that would be the answer, unfortunately.
Yeah, not yet. We get some training when we first get the new buses, but it's not extensive. We have to go out and seek out the training.
Do they send anybody out?
They do.
Those new buses now are much more technical.
I would imagine.
Yeah. Okay, that's sort of one option we can explore. Another one, we got thinking, as you know, we got that $500,000 grant to hire a project manager for the Bellingham Station project. That, as we're thinking about on implementation of that would be, we would like to do that as a limited term. So like a 3-year contract for that person for the money that we have. But that led us to think, okay, we don't really have a classification of limited term. So could it be, you know, the 326 plus a limited term? And then that got to the reserve component of it was, what if we did a limited term for like IT needing a help desk person to free them, somebody up to work on the more complicated IT things that go with the buses and those kinds of things. And using of reserves for that, it's kind of a one-time expense or one-time use for one-time expense because it's a limited term. So you're saying, okay, you're hired for 2 or 3 years as a help desk person. And then that's expires at the end of that. So we know we can calculate, okay, this is how much of reserves we're taking to fix that problem to buy us time and decision space, because that also dovetails into one of the other things that we're doing is efficiencies and looking at our processes and procedures and how do we gain efficiencies in these things too. And looking at people are very busy doing a lot of good things. Are those period? Is that busyness coming with the outcome that we want to create, or are they lasting legacy things that we're doing that we may not need to do, and to provide us in a risk management kind of looking at things? Okay, we don't need to do that to increase capacity to do some of these other things. So that's one of the things that's going on in that thing. And so how do you build some capacity for like IT to really study those things? And Andy's got some really good ideas.
I guess my concern with that, like an example right now, I think there's a little bit of a fallacy that they're going to be term limited, and that, I mean, the physics of the universe is we're always expanding. And so like, I can think of every single enterprise software that we've done at the city. We thought we were bringing on people for 2 years for implementation. We have never, ever been able to let those people go, not once. And so every time we think, oh, this is just for the Workday implementation, these are temporary 2.5 FTEs, they're there in perpetuity. to keep it going.
And that
So
would be
I,
the challenge is putting parameters around that. And that's why we were thinking like a help desk person is something that you can expand and contract. And you go back and it's a signed contract that that's what it is. We're committing to the board that that's where that is. We don't come back and say that's, so there'd be, these are ideas to try to throw out.
Yeah.
Talk about the risks. I appreciate that because that is what the local government a long time. You see that. So how do we mitigate those risks to an acceptable level that is, and is it an acceptable level to build some capacity? And so the things are like the long-term leave classification or that kind of reserve thing, limited term efficiencies, gaining that, and then the transit operators, which are kind of, or that kind of reserve thing is, so those are really the four options, recognizing constraint of not just hiring more employees. How do we do that with the constraint of, because we are, as was highlighted earlier, we have the operating issue that our operating expenses are exceeding our revenues. So we can't create more of that. And is there a way to leverage some of our reserves to help with that? So those are the things we're looking at. And so for today, all we're asking is just to consider, and then in August, we'll come back and say, is it worth putting it into the budget, costing it out, looking at the, we'll have some better ideas on parameters. But if that sounds like a decent way to go to put some more meat on the bones, if you will, start going out. So.
Anything else?
So my takeaway from that is continue working on these options for August with the constraints that I've heard, and then
I like the first two ideas.
yeah, me too. Yeah.
But it just seemed like our rule book would make us fat.
Forgive me.
I think even with the contract employee associated with a particular project, like the planning for the downtown, which is very much outside of our normal mode of operation, because it's tied to the project that once it's completed, the need for that employee is done. So there is more of a finite. You'll find something else for them to do.
Yes, yeah. And then the station is there. And then it's like, what are the obligations that come with this new asset? And so it goes. Yeah.
It's the tail. On that one, what we're trying to mitigate is that would get us to the point where we hopefully not going to have a public-private partner, and those things are now transferred to the private partner to do, not on us as an agency to do. So trying to buy time and space to get to that point to help. But I certainly understand Marilyn's point that would be working. Personalities change and commitments that were made 3 years ago. Now there's new people in the seat. Hey, let's keep that person. They're really great.
Well, thank you all. I appreciate the conversation.
I think we have our charge and do that. We'll have more discussion in August, which is just too much.
Okay, so next steps?
Next steps would be that.
I didn't know if we were gonna go over anything for credit.
I don't think I didn't have any next step. Well, on the Point Roberts, doing work with them on the race there to improve them. What you want to see from that on 2040, and you got your portrait. Do you feel you kind of went over what you heard? Yep. So to go on with that. So I think we've kind of covered each of those.
Yeah.
So
They're doing is really impressive. Other business announcements?
You have some announcements.
Michelle, wherever you are, can I have my slides, please? Speak to the voice in the sky.
Fun announcements. Maybe.
Maybe. That's okay. I can like riff for time. Oh wait, here we go. Sweet. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, my name is Genevieve and I'm the Community Relations and Marketing Manager here at WTA. And I just wanted to highlight some fun summer events that we have coming up for you guys. Next slide. Okay, yesterday, June 1st was the start of Ride Transit Month. And one of the things that we've done annually to celebrate is Transit Trivia, which I hosted last night. It's really awesome. We had a team from Cascadia Daily News. We had some employee teams, some retirees. So it was a lot of fun. And Larry Vlogger was an awesome host for us. On June 6th, we have two events, the Farmers Day Parade in Linden, and the Barkley Village Safety Festival. So in Linden, our operator Harbons will be driving, which is really awesome. He's from Linden, so it's cool for him to get to represent his community behind the wheel of a bus. And then our customer service representative, Chris, will be working at the Safety Festival. If you haven't been, if you have kids, or if you really like looking at like massive vehicles, it's super cool. They usually like land a helicopter in the middle of the event. So it's awesome. This will be, I think, our fourth year doing it. June 17th is the Goodwill Work Readiness Fair. That's something that we participate in annually to share job availabilities for transit operator hiring, as well as helping folks who are maybe looking at a new career and trying to figure out how to best get there without a car. And then to end the month, at the end of June, we are participating in the Birch Bay Kite Festival. We are offering some additional service. So we're increasing our service level up there so that folks don't have to rely on parking and messing with traffic. They can just leave their car behind and take the bus. Next, please. Any questions about June? Sorry. Great. Okay, July. We are looking, this is on the tentative side of things for the Everson Summer Festival and Parade. Potentially, we're always looking at increasing our East County events and connections. We will have an operator in the Bellingham Pride Parade, and annually we also open that up to employees, friends, family, board members, if you guys want to come walk in the parade with us and hand out candy. And then a new event on the calendar is the Inclusion Festival on July 26th, which is at Zwanich Park. And that'll be held by the Whatcom Center for Early Learning and Max Higby. And it'll be a really cool resource festival for folks with developmental and physical disabilities to connect them to resources and to just have a ton of fun. There's going to be a silent disco. There's a bubble machine. We'll have a bus there. It should be a great time and hopefully beautiful weather. Next. And then August gets really busy for us. We kick off the month with two events on the same day, the Ferndale Block Party and the Bellingham Kids Fest, which is at Civic Field and is essentially just thousands of children running around Civic Field. It's really fun. We'll bring a bus. We'll teach kids how to load their bike on a bus. The bus also has every year, it's been really hot every year we've done it. So the bus has been a nice air-conditioned space for families to hang out. So it's great to be there. August 2nd is our annual WTA Day at the Bells game, which you are all invited to. We give out tickets to employees, board members, and their families. And it's a great way to celebrate transit at the ball game. We will have our national champion, Jonathan, throwing the first pitch. And the national anthem will be sung by customer service rep, Tim. So you're welcome to come sit, hang with us, meet other WTA employees. And then we also table at that event to provide info about becoming a transit operator or about finding your bus routes. August 5th is one of our biggest events that we do every summer, and that is Senior Day in the Park. And that is an all hands on deck. We are a sponsor, we table, and then we also go above and beyond to help get every senior from senior centers all over Whatcom County
to Hovander Park in Ferndale, running extra buses, paratransit buses. We schedule pickups. I've got color coordinated bracelets for everybody. So it's a really fun production, and our mobility team puts in a lot of work to make sure that everybody who wants to come to Senior Day in the Park has reliable transportation to get there. This year, there will be a lot of effort put into making sure that folks are aware of our fare increase as well as the gold card changes. So we will have customer service staff there getting folks signed up for their reduced fare gold cards. And then we'll close out the month, August 22nd, the Bellingham School District Back to School Block Party. It's always a great time. That's for kids who are coming in all grades for the Bellingham School District. This event is really cool. They do vaccinations, they do haircuts, they give out backpacks, you can get clothes. There's a food truck and there's ice cream, and we have a bus. And we do this in partnership with Smart Trips to help families feel more comfortable with sending their kids on a WTA bus, explaining like, here's how you can get to soccer practice and home on the bus. So yeah, busy summer. And then next slide, please. And then some other summer happenings that you can ride WTA to. There's some really big soccer things starting up soon. And we are very lucky that all of the official watch parties are along bus routes or near the station. So Trackside and the Commercial Street Watch Party being the two biggest fan events, one being on the 47 and the Commercial Street Watch Party just 2 blocks away from Bellingham Station. And then if you check the Visit Bellingham website, there is a ton of other fun events that are going on all over Whatcom County. I'm pretty sure all of them are pretty accessible on WTA bus. If they're not, let me know. And then Northwest Tune-Up, July 11th and 12th. That's the same weekend as the Pride Parade. That'll be happening down near Trackside, so served by the 47. Northwest Washington Fair up in Linden, which you can take the bus to, and the Noisy Waters Mural Festival, again, that's down at the Granary. So a great summer for hopping on the bus. I would love to encourage all of you to try and take the bus to any summer events. We recently, a couple weeks ago, tested out something new with getting folks to Ski to See. We ran extra service on Route 1 every 10 minutes, and it was a massive success. There were buses that were standing room only. We saw like over 1,000 riders on that Sunday on just the Route 1 alone. And it was really, really fun and just great to hear and talk to people on the bus who have never ridden the bus before, but didn't want to try and navigate Fairhaven with their car. So yeah, as the years go on, I'd love to continue getting more and more event service coverage. But that starts with people wanting to take the bus there. So I would encourage you to try it this summer. Yeah.
Kudos to City of Bellingham for working with that and rock and roll folks.
Yeah, absolutely. City of Bellingham did a lot of work making sure that we would be able to get our buses. So in previous years, if you have tried to take the bus to the Ski to See finish line, we haven't been able to go past like 10th and Harris. So that Amtrak station is the end point of the Route 1. This year, we were able to get the bus all the way down to the Amtrak station, which then puts you a short walk straight to the finish line versus having to haul all the way uphill to 10th after you're done at the finish line. So it was so great to get people really close. There was bike valet too. So there were a lot of folks who put their bikes on the bus, and maybe did a multimodal trip there. I heard that bike valet at one point was totally full and they were not able to accept any more bikes for a couple hours. So yeah, it was a huge success as far as events go. Awesome. Thank you.
Just a plug for the Culshan Trackside and Commercial Street watch party that coincides with Trackside will be doing a lot, but the 2-day 2-site block party is on Juneteenth. So county employees, city employees have the day off. So it would be a great way for the community to come together. So
absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
We do not have the day off, so ride the bus.
Yes. Yeah. Not everyone does.
Well, you all enjoy
Some
the sun.
employees have it off. Yes.
Jamie, if you could also just remind us of service change date.
Oh, yes.
And fare change date.
Absolutely, I will. We have so much going on this summer. 2 of the biggest things being that our service changes happen on Sunday, July 14th. If you would like to grab, we've got June 14th, yeah. June 14th. We've got some transit guides with our superstar driver April on the cover. And then on September 1st is when we will be launching our fare increase. So we are doing all we can to get the communications out. So if any of you on the board work with community groups that you think might need a presentation or some extra materials, please let me know. I'm trying all I can to make sure that nobody is caught unaware come September 1st. So we've got newsletters going out. We've sent posters to a lot of the areas that have a lot of paratransit pickups. We'll be doing a social media campaign and putting things on the buses. But if any of you have any ideas or any areas that you would like for us to reach, I would love to hear it. You're welcome to send me an email or stop by my office upstairs at any time. Oh, and one other thing, date TBD, but this summer we are going to be launching Open Pay on our buses, which some of you might have heard about. So that would mean tapping your credit card, Apple Watch, iPhone, any smart device. You'll be able to tap that on our fare box readers. We're going to start kind of piloting a soft launch of that because these, next week, date TBD on that as well. But we are doing a gradual rollout of installing these readers as we get them. Our fleet team has been working tirelessly to get them. We will have these new readers on both our fixed route and our paratransit buses, which that is new to put them on paratransit. But we're really excited because this will be a really cool way to connect with people who aren't regular riders. Maybe you're coming into town for race week at the yacht club, or maybe you took Amtrak and you want to get away from the station and you don't want to think about trying to download the UMO app or making sure that you've got the cash that you need. So then allowing people to just tap a credit card takes one level of decision out of riding the bus. So we're really excited to spread the word about that. And I will make sure to connect you guys with all of our marketing materials once that's ready, so you can help me spread the word. Anything?
Somebody want to talk about the transit app as well?
Oh, sure. I'll just keep talking.
You got 45 minutes. Another
Public speaking fears me. I'll stay up here all day. Another really great thing that it's just been like a spring of cool initiatives. So much technology is happening. We are partnering with Transit app, which if some of you have traveled to larger cities, you might have used it. It's an app that works across transit systems worldwide. And we are now, Transit app is our official bus tracking app. It's very user-friendly, free to use. You can create a profile, save your destinations in there. But it's something that we are kind of kicking off alongside the World Cup starting. That kind of kickstarted our decision to partner with Transit app, just to make it easier for folks to find their bus, to know where they're going. For those of you who are frequent app users, you'll appreciate that the app interface is really smooth, especially if you have used Bus Tracker previously. And overall, we've heard a lot of really great feedback with Transit app. So if you have any questions, or Tim, if there's anything that you want to add.
No, you covered it quite nicely.
Thank you.
If you want to download it in the newsletter, there's a QR code. You can find it easily, but
yes, another plug for the newsletter if you haven't grabbed a copy.
And you can use it in different areas around the country. So it's not just for us, but if you go into like Portland, they have transit. And all the large cities are going to have the same. You're going to be able to use it for any community that has it. So.
And then on our end, like from a communications and marketing perspective, the Transit app provides us with a wealth of data, because within the app, you can rate the cleanliness of your bus, the friendliness of your bus driver. I've seen that, this does not exist for WTA, but for the New York subway, you can actually track if you saw a rat on the platform within Transit app. Not a problem at WTA, rat free. But anyway, they send us these like weekly data downloads, and it's so cool because you can see like people have searched for Route 14 the most this week, or this many people completed a trip via Transit app. And so, we've used Bus Tracker for years, and it's great and it served its purpose, but there's not a lot of like two-way, we don't get a ton of information out of it. Whereas this Transit app, part of the reason why I'd love everyone to use it is because that data will just benefit us in so many ways. Yeah, that is all I have.
That's a lot.
That is,
What do you
yeah.
think?
Any other thoughts, questions, concerns, ideas?
Thank you, Genevieve.
Thank you.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, of course. It's been great. Okay, I'll see you guys this summer.
All right, any other business or announcements?
I just want a ripple effect from the purchase of the Northland Diesel lot is that Northland Diesel is moving to Nooksack on a heavy industrial corner that was has been for sale for probably 25 years. So they're going to rehab that very main corner in downtown Nooksack. It's great. The three commercial buildings, anyway, right by Three Flavors, if you know where that is. So it's just really exciting to see that, again, kind of see that ripple effect. So it was really cool when I heard that news.
Awesome. Anyone else? We are adjourned. Good job, everybody. Thanks.
Bye, thank you.
Thanks, Shonda.
You're welcome. Bye.